Good evening, everyone. The Durham Public Schools Board of Education work session is now in session. At this time, we wish to extend a warm welcome to everyone who is joining us this evening. The purpose of this meeting is to inform our parents, staff, and constituents about the work aligned with our mission to embrace, educate, and empower every student to innovate, serve, and lead. The interpreters for tonight are Martha Romo Orgiles, and Marty Ramirez. Thank you for taking the time to join us. We will begin with a moment of silence. Thank you, everyone. Next, we will have our agenda review and approval.
Move approval of the agenda as presented.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Are any opposed? All right. The agenda for tonight is approved. And now we will move on to the board work session minutes from February 9th, 2023.
Move approval of the minutes from February 9th, 2023.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The board work session minutes from February 9th, 2023 are approved. And now we will have general public comment. So first, a quick review of the rules. First, please state your name. If speaking for an organization, please state your name and the name of the organization. Second, speakers are asked to present their comments in a specified time, which will be 3 minutes this evening. When the yellow light comes on, you have 1 minute left to start 1 minute left to start winding up your remarks. When the red light comes on, it will beep, which indicates your time is up. Complaints about named staff, students, or parents should not be voiced in open session. However, we are very interested in hearing your concerns with regard to public education, safety of students, or to the operation of the school system. Finally, the board members will listen carefully and consider the comments, but we do not engage in a discussion with speakers. Our first speaker tonight is Minister Paul Scott, and to be followed by Kevin Primus.
Good evening, Dr. Mabinga, Madam Chair, members of the school board. Tonight, I am here to support the resolution against House Bill 187, the anti-critical race theory bill, the anti-racial justice education bill, the anti-these truths are self-evident bill, the anti-I might not agree with what you say, but I will fight to the death to defend your right to say it bill. And finally, the truth crushed to the ground, the anti-truth crushed to the ground will rise again bill. On Tuesday, this bill goes before the K-12 Education Committee of the House. And I hope other school boards across the state stand up, because in this case, silence is contempt. We have to stand up against this bill, not only locally, but statewide, and also these attempts to crush the rights of our children nationally. And this must be done. It must be done now. We must stop this bill because, in my opinion, this bill is a perfect example of the linchpin legislation that holds systemic white supremacy together. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker And our last speaker will be Kevin Primus.
Good evening, Dr. Mabenga, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the board. I wanted to speak about two things. I really wanted to speak about one, but I feel compelled to speak about the second one. The first one is just really supporting the proclamation for arts in our schools month and encouraging us, as I had some conversations with a couple of arts educators, one who is currently in Durham Public Schools, former president of the North Carolina Art Education Association, is one of our public school arts teachers, and then another one who was in our public schools, who's now in the Washington, DC school district, just to kind of get their feeling for, this is an exciting proclamation. What ways can we help to implement this in ways that are very meaningful? And some of the feedback I got from them was, can we think more creatively about integrating the arts with our core subjects? Something that we talk about, but in the experience of one of these art educators who's not here, even in the DC school district with, schools that are really focused and they pay their teachers a lot, still have trouble getting core teachers to integrate and to collaborate with the arts teachers so that the arts isn't just something separate, but it's something that's integrated and they can reinforce. And sometimes teachers are very willing as arts teachers to integrate those things, those themes that are in the other core courses, but it's hard to find time to plan. It's hard to find that support. And then, the other idea being that time needs to be protected, that sometimes we're having kids who are very young, who don't have the coarse motor skills to develop the fine motor skills, and that art precedes writing, and that we really value the natural progression that Maria Montessori and many other educators have gone before us to show us how humans develop. And sometimes by taking out or kind of putting on the sideline the arts, it's not a good thing. But what I feel compelled to talk about is a video that you may or may not have seen from maybe 5 or 6 days ago that got on some news sources about violence on a school bus that could have happened anywhere in the country, but apparently it happened in Durham. I don't speak Spanish. The video I saw was in Spanish, and I don't have answers, many, but I did have a conversation with a lifelong friend of mine who is the chair of the Florida Council on the social status of Black men and boys. He's biracial in terms of his mother was Puerto Rican, his father was Black, and the level of violence, even in his eyes, he was a police officer in Pittsburgh and in Baltimore, so very intense settings. The level of violence for a school bus was kind of off the radar for him, and he strongly suggested a community conversation. I don't know who was involved. I don't know who the students were, the parents. Maybe it's already happening. Maybe it's already in the works. But if we can have a community conversation and bring people together, because the community is talking about this incident, I think that would be a very important and helpful thing for our community to feel that this is not something that would, even if it's an isolated incident,
Thank you.
continue. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, and that concludes our public comment for this evening. We will now go on to our consent items. And I will take,
Move approval of the consent agenda.
Again,
all in favor say aye.
aye.
Any opposed? Okay, it passes unanimously. And now we will go on to our first item for discussion, which is a resolution by the Durham Public Schools Board of Education opposing House Bill 187. This resolution addresses the bill now in the state legislature and House Bill 187, equality in education. And we will, as it is a bit long, we will read the first page of it. And
Madam Chair, if I may, there's so many pieces of this, and I know time is an issue, but I just ask that we read the whole entirety of the bill, if it's possible. Thank
okay,
you so much.
let's go ahead and read the whole thing then. And we will start with Ms. Rogers and each take a section.
Resolution of the Durham Public Schools Board of Education opposing House Bill 187. Whereas House Bill 187, Equality in Education, states that public school units shall not promote that a mediocrity is inherently racist or sexist, that the United States was created by members of a particular race or sex for the purpose of oppressing members of another race or sex, or that the rule of law does not exist, but instead is a series of power relationships and struggles among racial or other groups. And
Whereas if HB 187 is enacted, it would prohibit educators from discussing the full facts of US American history when several constitutional amendments were created to redress racist and sexist beliefs and policies in the original US Constitution for the purpose of restoring the rights of previously oppressed members of a race or sex. And
Whereas HB 187 asserts that the United States was not created by members of a particular race or sex for the purpose of oppressing members of another race. However, the 13th Amendment of 1865 abolished slavery, a system in which members of a particular race had, in fact, oppressed members of another race. And
Whereas House Bill 187 asserts that the United States was not created by members of a particular race or sex for the purpose of oppressing members of another race. However, educators would be prohibited to debate or consider teaching about the Jim Crow era, in which a series of laws prevented African Americans from accessing rights such as voting or holding office. And
Whereas HB 187 asserts that the United States was not created by members of a particular race or sex for the purpose of oppressing members of another race or sex. However, educators would be prohibited to debate or consider teaching that women were not granted the right to vote until 1920 under the 19th Amendment, and even then, African American and Indigenous women were still routinely denied their voting rights. And
whereas a sound education, including accurate facts about all aspects of US American history, including systemic racism and discrimination, is guaranteed for every North Carolina student in our state's constitution. And
whereas more than 65 years after the Supreme Court ruling on Brown versus Board, segregated schooling is a particularly profound and timely demonstration of the ongoing persistence of systemic racism. And
whereas in 2017, Durham Public Schools created our Office of Equity Affairs, charged with ensuring equity and educational opportunities for all DPS students, regardless of race or ethnicity. And
whereas in 2018, DPS developed a strategic plan with a guiding principle which states, "We believe in equity. Our students and schools deserve equitable access to the resources and opportunities they need to succeed. Durham Public Schools and the community must distribute these resources in a manner that eliminates inequities." And
whereas in 2019, the North Carolina State Board of Education adopted a strategic plan which defined equity as an essential guiding principle. And
whereas in 2020, the North Carolina State Board of Education passed a resolution to support equity and excellence in North Carolina public education. And
whereas that resolution stated that the state board will review and appropriately revise its policies through an equity lens and commit to work with the superintendent and the Department of Public Instruction to create and maintain an equity officer to ensure consistency and continuity with this essential guiding principle inside and outside the agency. And
whereas in February 2021, the North Carolina State Board of Education approved a new social studies standards, which were developed by educators to ensure that a more comprehensive, accurate, and honest history was taught to all students, including content on racism, identity, and discrimination. And
whereas the House of Representatives and the North Carolina General Assembly recently voted along party lines to advance House Bill 187. And
whereas these bills are partisan, divisive, and are the result of coordinated work by the American Legislative Exchange Council, or ALEC, and the Heritage Foundation. And
whereas House Bill 187 attempts to restrict and prohibit honest conversations about race, conflicting with existing state and local education standards and infringing on the free speech rights of students, educators, and staff, although the bill states that it cannot violate freedom of speech rights. And
Whereas DPS follows the North Carolina Standard Course of Study, and teachers in DPS have the support of administrators, department chairs, curriculum specialists, and instructional coaches as they plan lessons that help students master the content of the standards.
Whereas in DPS, our curriculum and trainings include a race equity lens and culturally responsive instruction, as well as these trainings are offered from content expert consultants as we work together to dismantle racism and work together towards a more just future. And
Whereas DPS Board of Education Policy 3100 affirms that our board recognizes that curriculum development must be an ongoing process in order to continually address the changing needs and diversity of all students and to fulfill the educational goals of the board. Culturally responsive curriculum is critical to achieving this goal and to nurture the cultural well-being of the students and reflect the long-term interests of the community.
Whereas DPS continues to unanimously approve equity-based policy and resolutions to advance practices of diversity, equity, and inclusion to support all of our diverse students and staff to create a more equitable and inclusive experience where Black students, families, and staff can be affirmed and can express themselves in a safe and positive way.
therefore, be it resolved that the Durham Public Schools Board of Education urges members of the North Carolina General Assembly to vote no on House Bill 187 and
Be it further resolved that the DPS Board of Education urges members of the NC General Assembly to focus on developing a robust public education budget with an equity toolkit that fully supports students in North Carolina. And
be it further resolved that the DPS Board of Education urges members of the North Carolina General Assembly to focus on the following shared recommendations from the DPS BOE legislative agendas to address statewide equity concerns, including, but not limited to, fund dedicated equity directors for every local education authority to develop and share best practices statewide, adopt a comprehensive anti-racist and inclusive curriculum for every school, fund professional development that includes diversity, equity, social emotional learning, inclusion, cultural competency, and anti-racist training, expand the North Carolina Teaching Fellows Program, especially at the HBCUs, and increase representation of teachers of color, support all students, families, and staff, including people of color, LGBTQIA+ students and staff, students with exceptional needs, immigrant students and families, and people experiencing homelessness and poverty, and expand Title IX protections to protect students against sexual assault. Signed this 9th day of March, 2023.
Thank you all.
yes, thank you so much. I just wanted to I want to thank Minister Paul Scott. You know, this is one of the great things of working together with our community and listening. And you brought this to us at the last board meeting, and you pretty much alerted us, right? Because we're handling so many different things, but we cannot lose sight of these things that are definitely attacks. And there's so many attacks on the education of our students, things that attack the dignity of our families, things that attack the dignity of history itself and the veracity of history itself. And you came to us and you said, you did this right, you know, when it was House Bill 324. And the expectation and the accountability is do right this time too, because we cannot let this wave come over us and not take a stance. And I just want to thank you. This board does work really hard, and this was a board effort. And so we would just want to thank you. And we want to thank the voices of Durham, you know, Durham Voices, community members, leaders who also weighed in and talked about the ways, you know, including, you know, this board went through so many different revisions of this. And I thank all my colleagues for all the ways that we threw in, you know, because we needed this to happen. But there were, you know, certain things about how do we acknowledge the work that is being done, you know, as we are trying to create the buffer, the necessary buffers to protect our students. And so I really thank you for all your work. And I think the community that stands and supports our students as well. Okay, Yes, ma'am. I make a motion that we pass this resolution of the Durham Public Schools Board of Education opposing House Bill 187.
Second.
I'm going to ask if there's any further discussion, and at this moment also share that I just want to add a few grammatical edits. Okay, we're gonna vote first, and then I will add my discussion point. Okay. My apologies. Okay, it has been moved and properly seconded. Is there any further discussion now? My comment is, I just want to clean up a few grammatical things. There are a couple ands missing. Is there any other discussion?
I trust that you can work on those with Nicole? Is that-
Yes.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing those to our attention.
No edits to the content. Yeah, okay. All right, great. Let's go ahead and then with those minor little edits, go ahead and accept the motion in the second and vote. Everyone in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And any opposed? All right, it unanimously passes our resolution against House Bill 187. Thank you, everyone. I wanted to note as well that we are missing one board member and who had a prior commitment and will be here at a later. All right, now we are going to move on to our next item, which is the contract for new financial and human resource system. And I will pass it to Ms. Giovanni.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, Dr. Mabanga, board members, colleagues, and community. I just wanted to let you know that the board did approve, when Mr. Lesueur brought this to you on February 9th, a contract and to move forward with the negotiations on a contract for a new ERP system. So we did work on that, including myself, Mr. Malone, and Ms. Lynn at Tharrington Smith did go back and forth with negotiations with the provider, and we did come up with a contract that suitably protects Durham Public Schools moving forward. None of the substantive information that Mr. Lesueur, Paul, I'm sorry, Paul. None of the substantive or financial information has changed. It was simply, which is why I'm presenting it, because it became a legal issue just to get the contract moving forward. So we did finalize the negotiations on this early yesterday afternoon, which is why it was added a little bit late to the agenda. And we are asking the board, since you hadn't seen it, just out of an abundance of caution to have allowed you to see this contract. So we are asking for approval of this so that we can move forward with Paul's ERP.
Thank you, Ms. Giovanni. Any discussion?
I would just know how excited Mr. Lesueur was about this contract and this new financial and HR system and the improvements that it's going to bring for our staff. So with that, I would just move approval of the contract with Philogist for the new WinGauge financial and human resource system. How'd I do?
Second.
Right. It has been moved and properly seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And any other discussion? Any opposed? Okay. Passes unanimously. I'm getting my flow here. Forgive me. All right. Thank you all very much. And now we're going to move on to another item under Ms. Giovanni, the update and status on the training on LGBTQIA plus individuals.
Thank you. If you could pull up the PowerPoint, please. Just to bring back before we get started, to the board's recollection, Ms. Chavez and I were tasked with working together to put together a training regarding LGBTQIA plus matters for the board and the superintendent's cabinet. We have worked meeting for many, many hours, over many, many weeks, to make sure that it is a robust and impactful training. And I do believe that we have achieved that. Next slide, please. So there won't be a lot of substance in this because obviously we are working with the presenters on the substance. Just want to recognize their expertise and not really dictate to them what needs to be shared. But we found folks that are experts in their fields and we are working with them to craft what the substance will be. But this is a logistics update just to kind of let you and the community know what we are working on. It will be broken into two separate trainings, 101 and 201. 101 will be groundwork and setting the stage on identities and experiences for elected boards. 201 will be a state of the law around the country in North Carolina, and then an interactive workshop for boards. Next slide, please. This is a kind of tentative outline regarding what the subjects are to kind of guide as we're working on the actual detailed work. So just wanted to kind of share that with, again, for the community and the board to take a look. These may change depending on what the actual experts do share with us. We did want to make sure that several of our presenters did identify as members of the LGBTQIA plus community, even though we do have several allies as well. But so we're going to obviously defer to those experts, and these are just kind of general overviews. Next slide, please. Again, this is the state of the law. We have the legal counsel for NSBA and Eva with Tharrington Smith. I'm not even going to try with the last names anymore. They're going to come and present for about 45 minutes. I know while Mr. Malone and I may be enthralled by the law, not so sure everyone else would be. But they will be there, to answer those questions. Next slide, please. And then we have invited Gender Spectrum, a national group, to come in. Dr. Rose Chung is going to come and present. They have kind of a generic list, but we're just going to defer to them again. We've shared with them our policies on gender supports and equity and have kind of given them a little bit of guidance, but we're again going to wait for them to share their expertise. Next slide, please. Next slide. So the location of the trainings will be at the Mini Fort Brown Staff Development Center. The 101 will be held on April 21st, and that will again take place at the SDC. And I did receive confirmation that May 19th will be the date for 201. And you will obviously, I will share additional information out with you as I obtain it. But if you could please hold those dates, and that would be lunch starting at 11:30 and the actual training going from 12:30 to 4:30 on both of those dates. And just again, April 21st will be in person at SDC. May 19th will be in person for the board. We will stream in the other two presenters for fiscal reasons primarily, because we have two different people coming in, and the topics that they'll be presenting on will be, are amenable to being presented virtually. So they will be virtual streamed in, but we will be in person at the SDC. Next, I believe that's the final slide. I'm happy to entertain any questions. And Ms. Chavez as well. She's been doing the large share of this work. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Giovanni, for presenting. And yes, we are very excited to move this forward and present it to everyone, and also let the public know where we stand on our progress with this training. We hope this will be very foundational and really give us a bit of a guidebook for where to go. To continue the work in our district to support our LGBTQ plus students. And are there any comments, questions? Ms. Byer?
So just deep gratitude to you, Ms. Chavez and Ms. Giovanni, for working on this. I'm so excited that this is finally coming to fruition. It's So my only question is, I know board members will be there. Will it also include senior leadership staff? How are you all thinking? Is it just us? Is it deeper than us? Or is it principals? How deeply is the training going?
Can I add to that? It did say for boards. So is it geared towards boards or could it be also geared towards other folks?
So primarily that was our focus, because the role of boards and governance and just making sure that it would be able to be implemented by boards, like what it is that you're sharing as you're making decisions on policies, et cetera. So it is targeted towards boards, but they did affirm for us that it is appropriate for really, I mean, anyone, right? But the focus is going to be on board. And as of right now, we were thinking, since we want to make sure that it's not, I don't know, intimate's maybe not the right word, but just to make sure that we can really have those kind of robust, deep conversations, it would just be limited to board members and Dr. Mubanga's cabinet. But our plan is obviously not stop here. I mean, I think maybe it's not speaking out of turn, but I think that the plan is for us to continue, with educating all of our DPS staff members. But this initial training would be, that is my understanding of what the board had wanted, and that's where I think Ms. Chavez, I'm terrible today. I'm like, what in the world?
You can say Emily.
I don't. Maloney.
Nice to have some lightheartedness at our meeting. So, thanks, Ms. Giovanni, for, just kind of clarifying that. Chair Umstead, I know we had talked a little bit about the possibility, which now I'll kind of open up, about inviting task force members to join as well. If they have already, agreed to participate in our LGBTQ plus task force, without, it being mandatory for them. It is a long 8 hours. So maybe if you want to share any thoughts on that.
So it is a publicly noticed board meeting, and it would be open to the public to observe if they, in person at the SDC. But it was kind of following the retreat model where the training is primarily focused towards the board and senior leadership, but it is an open meeting. So any members of the task force or the community that would like to be, in the audience while the training is occurring, it is an open meeting.
We could encourage that or invite that, if people are able. Yes. Okay, Ms. Rogers.
So I'm very appreciative of all the work y'all have put into this. I do want to ask that we get an opportunity to circle back on the task force and make sure all the invitations have gone out to all the people that we expected to go out and that we've gotten a response from folks before we kind of like open up meetings. I mean, like, it's open to the public, they can come, but if we haven't officially set the task force and started the meetings, I hesitate to try to invite them to something.
For that. I know that, Mr. Sudduth has been working on the invitations, and we will probably have an update on that soon, maybe the next meeting, or, but I know there's been a lot of work going into that, into the invitations and seeing who will be on board with the task force. So, your point is well taken, and let's see where we are with, when we get a full update on the task force.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that so much too. I know we have I'm glad senior staff will be there with us and intentionally there, cabinet folks there. I know we have a lot of internal stakeholders that this is near and dear to their hearts and overdue. So I hope that if some folks need time off or need to get a sub to be there, they could. I know this isn't the last training, but I know it is. We have a lot of internal expertise and passion towards how we can address these issues in an ongoing way, and how they're playing out at the school level. So I hope folks will be able to join and then accelerate our next plan for really more deeply training at the school level, folks. Yeah, but thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Yes, Chair Armstead.
Can I just ask a question about cost? How much will this cost for the district? Just curious.
Yes, the ballpark cost will be about $5,600 for all of the speakers and, but not including any catering. But about $5,600 for, and that includes, actually Eva from Tharrington Smith also. So just making sure we're ballparking it, but
That sounds
about,
good.
that's about right.
Thank you. I just always curious to know what our investments are for different training, so that's fast.
Ms. Valladares.
I also commend that, this is going to be a public meeting that's going to be streamed and it's going to have interpretation.
So I would defer to the board on the streaming. I think the board would, y'all would make that decision.
I understand that there might be components that will not be streamed because I understand there's parts of trainings, and if there's like the general educational component of that training, for that to be streamed and that to be available to everyone, because these are resources that we can't just spend all this money and it's closed off to only a small group of people. Anybody in DPS needs to know what our policies are. We're working on translating the policy book. And this is in our policy book. And, and there are families who right now have questions about what's the policy because it's not yet available in Spanish or different languages. So the thing is that, this resource might be what they're going on right now in terms of how this training and how the policies kind of paint the picture of what is DPS attempting to do to protect all our students, right? And so I think that the educational component should be streamed. And then, if there are definitely the work session pieces that might need to, have that level of fostering that environment, right? I understand that maybe that part will not be streamed, but there's the educational component. So it's our money's worth for everyone to have access to this.
Thank you. Does anybody else have comment on that?
Yeah, I
Dr.
just want
Mubin?
to echo what Ms. Valladares just said. I agree completely with her. This good investment that we really need to stream this. The training, as we said, cabinet members and board. I will pretty much caution us to be able to open this at this point to all our employees. We don't want a flood of folks coming out in the classrooms as we're dealing with vacancies and all that kind of stuff. But if we stream this is a good resource that we can use in the future training with our teachers and principals and so forth. So that will be a good compromise.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Dr. Meng. Do we have staff that are identified on the task force? We've been through so many lists. That's the group I was actually trying to think of as well.
I'm going to defer this to Mr. Sadaf.
We do, and we are still adding to the list. I am working with Ms. Chavez and Chair Armstead on the list. We're still working on it, filling it out. Some of the invitations that we've sent out have not been responded to, so we're still building it out.
And might say that, especially since this training is more about governance, but this is different, and task force members, of course, could come, but I think, might also need their own training to make sure there's kind of normed around common language and understanding as well. And so I think, I don't want to get too off track, but I think they'll need a separate training as well to help make sure that they're ready to go with their work.
So I'm hearing a desire for the educational, more informational kind of lecture pieces to be streamed so that everyone with interpretation, so that anyone at the schools can have access to it. And it is also linguistically accessible to our families who are primarily or entirely Spanish speaking. And then we will maybe break up some of the time to have more conversation that is not streamed, that allows us to go a little deeper as a board and upper administration. Okay, all right, great.
This was just for information. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have. Next, we have an arts. Okay, I'm in the right place. Arts in Our Schools Month proclamation. Dr. Hardy, would you like to share? Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Good evening to our board members, community, Dr. Mabinga. As you heard in our public comment, this is arts in our schools, and we are excited to celebrate that tonight. It's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Jeremy Tucker, Director of Arts Education for Durham Public Schools, who will introduce our proclamation to be read by our board, celebrating March as Arts in Schools Month. And this is before the board tonight for action. Mr. Tucker.
Good evening, Dr. Mabinga, Vice Chair Umstead, Chair Umstead and Vice Chair Chavez, and members of the DPS Board of Education. Arts education is one of the shining lights of Durham Public Schools. If you visit one of our schools, you are bound to see right now our students and teachers busy working on their spring musicals, presenting visual art exhibitions, spring instrumental and vocal concerts, as well as dance, piano, and maybe even a guitar recital. District-wide, we offer 20 district arts events throughout the year. That includes every DPS school. Just recently, an Evening to Shine was presented safely by over 500 students in partnership with the Durham Performing Arts Center and with the DPS Foundation. Our DPS arts educators led our students, and for the very first time, this event showcased our visual arts in the program. Our community host, MC Pierce Freelon, presented all 200 of our elementary performers with a copy of his book live on stage, and we are so lucky to provide each of you with a copy as well. A first for the Durham Performing Arts Center was offering streaming translation services provided by our very own DPS Multilingual Resource Center to our Spanish-speaking families who were able to enjoy the entire performance in their language. We were also excited to offer ASL services during this year's performance, and which was also a first for this production. Additionally, almost 2,300 community members attended this event, which is the most ever that have attended. And we were most proud to have every single school represented on stage this year. It was certainly an evening to shine for our students and district on stage. We want to thank you for being present to witness our incredible students live on stage. Each of you were here, 100% attendance. The community needs to hear that. Also to our multiple partners, departments, and community members that truly gave all of our students a platform to shine. To continue recognizing our student and teacher successes, we do want to invite each of you to the following district events that remain this year. Our teacher art show with music teacher performances will be presented in partnership with the Durham Arts Council. We have an opening scheduled for this Friday from 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock, as well as on April 21st from 6 to 8. Middle School All-County Chorus Concert at DSA will be presented on April the 14th at 5 o'clock. We have guest conductor Dale Duncan from Atlanta, Georgia, that will work with our students and teachers. Elementary All-County Chorus in partnership with the Carolina Theater will be presented on April 18th at 6 o'clock with guest conductor Jason Alexander Holmes from Cincinnati, Ohio. DPS Elementary Art Show at the Streets of South Point will be April 17th through April 29th, and the Secondary Art Show at Streets of South Point will be held from May 1st through May 13th. Arts in Our Schools Month is an annual celebration originally proclaimed by the U.S. Department of Education that showcases the accomplishments of students in dance, music, theater, and visual arts nationwide. This annual celebration gives our students, our teachers, and our key decision makers a chance to appreciate how essential arts education as well as arts programming are in all of our schools. The arts not only allow our students a vehicle to express themselves, but also reinforces what students learn in other content areas across the curriculum when the arts are integrated purposely. We also know that when students are enrolled in arts courses and participate in after-school arts programs, they have a higher attendance rate as well as a graduation rate. DPS celebrates the importance and value of arts education during this entire month of March and all year, but especially this month. We also celebrate the power to change all students' lives, increase school attendance, as well as academic performance. DPS continues to build its well-rounded in its well-earned reputation as a state leader in arts education and programming, hitting records for participation in dance, music, theater, and visual arts. For the mentioned reasons, we believe in universal access to arts. Our school administrators, each of you, our community partners and teachers are working in unison to ensure that we provide both the inspiration and the infrastructure to ensure participation by all of our students. So thank you. Vice Chair Chavez, I yield to you and the members of the Board of Education to read this year's Arts in Our Schools Month proclamation.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hardy and Mr. Tucker. We are so proud of the arts in our schools, and we're very proud to attend an evening to shine a few weeks ago. And if the public has not seen pictures on our social media, they are available. So we will read this proclamation, each of us taking a section. And may we start with Ms. Rogers again?
Proclamation Arts in Our Schools Month. Whereas all students have the right to an arts education that includes dance, media arts, music, theater, visual arts, and performing arts taught by certified art educators in partnership with community providers, and
Whereas art education has the power to change students' lives, and
Whereas arts education is a key to reigniting students' learning in a post-pandemic world, and
Whereas arts education helps nurture healthy, inclusive communities where all points of view are respected, and
Whereas arts education experiences help students understand their own cultural roots and appreciate others' cultural roots and traditions, and
whereas arts education supports the social and emotional well-being of students and fosters a more positive, safer school environment, and
whereas arts education is part of the well-rounded education for every student as outlined in the Every Student Succeeds Act and in state law.
therefore be it resolved that Durham Public Schools Board of Education pledges to maintain and grow the arts education programs, as well as proclaims March 1st through 31st, 2023 as Arts in Our Schools Month, and asks all to celebrate the importance of the arts in our students' lives. Signed the 9th day of March, 2023.
thank you, everyone. Ms. Valladares.
This is very exciting. And I want to thank our staff. I want to thank, our wonderful, wonderful directors, everyone who has been involved to support arts, but especially, when we have Jeremy Tucker, we are so proud of all the work that you've done and all the ways you plug in. And believe me, it is just medicine to see our kids enjoying the arts, to see their faces. You can't pay, like there's no amount of money we can throw, at just an intention. And then to see that materialize, there's no price tag. That's what I'm trying to say. There's no price tag to what we were able to see at the show, An Evening to Shine. But I also want to tell you something else that was so encouraging, because some of my colleagues and I went and visited a school, and I'm telling you how the arts, the integration, kind of what was mentioned tonight about how to integrate, how can we empower our teachers to implement arts in the curriculum, right? And so we went with my colleague Millicent Rogers and my colleague Natalie Byer. We went to DSA, and they were doing, the 150 faces of Durham history, right? And it was like an exhibit. But here's the art component was that our students were supposed to look up some folks and figure out, and they named artists and people who were musicians, and also, of course, Polly Murray, and they had their own presentations. And we were kind of sitting there, and there was definitely this air of these students are already giving us the information and how they're able to integrate that, and what is their response. And there was like a really good reflective piece that I felt was very artistic. It was very beautiful in the ways the students shared about what this project meant for them, the ways they interacted with one another, kind of shared stories, the ways we had to share our own stories. They made me, also like appreciate the arts, because in the background, Miss Kim Fox Gugino, right? Had in the office. So, in the office, there was a background of music, and it was Amadou et Mariam, Je pense à toi. And that was playing in the background. And I was like, immediately, like, this is creating the environment for these kind of projects and this kind of engagement. And I did do my own engaging in arts education by kind of sharing my rendition, which was really fast, of Je pense à toi. And I kind of shared it. And I was like, because I told Ms. Kim Giugino that just hearing that element of creating the space, you know, for students to interact, to create. And I know they're going to further that work. I mean, they're going to come back and maybe next time do more, you know, involve more of the arts. But I want to encourage our educators in as many ways as possible, not just this month, as you said, the whole year. Arts is life-changing. Arts can be the experience that will be engraved in your brain. And they both know what I'm talking about, because there are things engraved in my brain because there were people who focused the arts. Thank you. I made the motion already, ma'am. I didn't make the motion? Okay, can I make the, okay, I'll make the motion that we, the motion to pass the proclamation, Arts in Our Schools Month.
Second.
Is there any further discussion?
I would just add thank you, and to all the arts teachers in all of our classrooms and across the district. Jeremy, for your recognition, not only in Durham, but across the state, but also all the teachers and educators every day who are helping engage our kids. Just want to say appreciation to them, and our community members who also support that work. Museum of Durham History is a part of that exhibit, but we know we have several other community organizations that help support our kids in the classroom. So thank you.
And also to Pierce, I just want to showcase this amazing book that we all received tonight, you know? Daddy Daughter Day. And so what a great job Pierce did emceeing. And it's great to see Durham alumni sharing their arts talents with the world. So thank y'all.
Awesome. Any further discussion? All right. It has been moved and properly seconded, and now all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. The Arts in Our Schools Month proclamation unanimously passes. Thank you.
If we can go ahead and pull up our priority 4 presentation tonight, the board will have the opportunity to hear information from both priority 4 and priority 5. Our priority 4 leads are Dr. Stacy D. Stewart's Chief of Schools and Mr. William Sutterth, Chief Communications Officer. At this time, I will turn it over to Mr. Sutterth.
Members of the board, fellow cabinet members, guests, and all the ships at sea, thank you very much tonight. I'm excited to share information with you about the priority for strengthening school, family, and community engagement. If we could go to the next slide, please. We have a wide-ranging team of DPS staff members and colleagues who have helped us on the 3 goal teams that actually went through a bit of a transformation this year, reflecting reorganization and transformation in Durham Public Schools. And I'd like to ask Dr. Dietrich Danner and Ms. Sheena Cooper to please stand very briefly. They are the leads for priority for goals 4A, 4B, and 4C. 4B and 4C for family, school, and community engagement and community partnerships were combined. And the leadership of those teams was shifted, reflecting the changes that Dr. Mavinga made organizationally in moving community engagement tasks, some community engagement tasks to Dr. Tanner's Office of Federal Programs and Community Engagement, and clarifying Ms. Cooper's role in charge of marketing and strategic communications as well. This has been a really good realignment and refocusing of our efforts that is going to carry us forward as we go into the next 5-year strategic plan. If we could go to the next slide, please. In depth, the priority, the goal descriptions, goal 4A by 2023, DPS will improve the perception of each school based on the following 4 questions in the teacher working conditions survey. Supportive school, community is supportive of the school maintains clear 2-way communication, an atmosphere of trust and mutual respect in the school, and overall my school is a good place to work and learn. Goal 4B, that DPS will strengthen family and school community engagement by demonstrating a 20% increase in parent and family participation in school programs. And 4C, by 2023, every school will have a community partner that is committed to providing meaningful programs and services to meet the diverse needs of students. As with so many other of our priorities and goals, COVID had a great impact on us, and having a pandemic drop on you in the middle of a 5-year plan is nothing anyone was anticipating. But we are proud of the efforts that we have done to rebound from the pandemic, not just academically, but also in terms of priority 4. On the next slide, some detail. As with so many of our other goals in the strategic plan, we had annual benchmarks for community support, two-way communication, trust and mutual respect, and a good place to work in goal 4A. I have said this several times, that the use of the teacher working conditions survey as a proxy for community feedback about our schools was a bit of a compromise at the establishment of the strategic plan. What resources, what information, what measures do we have? And it was an imperfect one, but it was something that we could track year after year after year. If you go to the next slide, you will see that we largely met our goals in 2019, 2020, and 2021. You'll see consistent increases on the first 3 lines in each category. The ones that I want to call to your attention, however, the most important ones for this report are the purple line and the blue line at the bottom. The purple line represents the teacher working condition survey results in 2022, and the blue line below that was our target for this year. So this was the first year that we fell short of those targets, and the 2023 teacher working conditions survey is yet to come, and is being in the process of being rolled out for our employees as we go. On the next slide, you see the strategies that were established by the strategic plan committee back in 2018 to establish formal relationships and collaborative structures, to engage stakeholders, facilitate open dialogue with stakeholders, engage parents in the larger community in ongoing dialogue about the changes needed to prepare more students for success, diversify methods of two-way communication, regularly survey students, families, and communities, build a culture of collaboration and shared decision-making, focus on continued professional development for teachers, ensure teachers have the time, tools, and trust they need to improve teaching and learning. As you can see, some of those strategies are less about engagement and more about the teacher working conditions survey as a tool. So if we go to the next slide and we look at some of the key accomplishments by July 2023 at the close of this 5-year plan that are focused on engagement, you'll see that we have worked on that on school perceptions through several different tools, and also worked on two-way communications. The showcase of schools, restoring that after the pandemic, establishing the use of engage.dpsnc.net, which we're in the process of ramping up again for the latest Growing Together round. Soliciting robust community feedback for the equity policy, developing a student enrollment working group, publicizing the district through print materials such as the Spark Insider magazine that goes to every subscriber and purchaser of Durham Magazine, as well as we just heard, An Evening to Shine, our Blackboard app, which has been a long time coming and is about to get a further upgrade as we roll out to parents more instructions about how they can use it to actually sign in and receive direct messaging from us. And coming forward, we are pleased that we are receiving increased support from the DPS Foundation for some of our marketing initiatives, backpacks that went to all of our pre-K partners filled with coloring books and goodies, but also marketing materials for rising kindergartners, telling them how great it's going to be part of Durham Public Schools. We're also working with them on a project for targeting rising fifth graders to make sure that we have additional support for our middle schools. And these are projects that Ms. Cooper, as Director of Marketing and Strategic Communications, has really taken the lead in and has solicited lots of support from the DPS Foundation for helping make those possible. The Growing Together project is an ongoing thing. It is an example of robust engagement that has also taught us how much more we need to do in the future. And the Parent Ambassador Program that we've established to provide two-way communications, and we're continuing to roll that out. We're looking forward to soon having a parent ambassador at every school. That is goal 4A. If I can move on quickly to goal 4B, by 2023, DPS will strengthen family, school, and community engagement with a 20% increase in family and parent and family participation in school programs. It's important to, I would like to, I'll go briefly through the strategies. And the first one is the most important one, the Family Academy as the hub and the universal platform for parent engagement programming. As we are expanding what we are required to do with Title I to what we should be doing as a best practice at every school, the things that we do work for all of our students and their families. Increasing multilingual communication, partnering with community organizations to sponsor engagement, establishing routine methods for obtaining feedback, demonstrating improvement in public perception, and utilizing an annual parent survey to gather input regarding family participation in school programs. And it's important that we go to the next slide and repeat that the next slide. I'm sorry, one more. In Durham Public Schools, family engagement is a shared responsibility in which schools, families, community agencies, and organizations are building and fostering relationships in meaningful ways where all stakeholders are committed to their children's learning and development. It is important to us that this is about more than just perception, but about authentic relationship building and connection with our families so that they can influence our schools and we can support them in influencing their students. On the next slide, some of our key accomplishments. Again, Family Academy. I can't emphasize enough the importance and the support of the Multilingual Resource Center. They have an important role that is separate from community engagement. They are service providers. They provide mandated services that are very, very, very important. But they are also tremendous resources for ideas and strategies and assistance in ensuring that our engagement reaches the entire community. We have the Title I Parent Family Engagement and Advisory Council. We have the Parent Ambassador Program, again, which supports that engagement further. And I've already mentioned how this goal, this family engagement goal works so well with our partnership goal for goal 4C that we just combined the teams because there's too much synergy there. I also want to particularly highlight that one of Dr. Mabenga's non-negotiables for our schools this year that he set out that all schools are required to engage parents in meaningful ways that result in trusting relationships, increasing enrollment, and collaborative partnership for student achievement. And these are the things that Dr. Stewart, my co-lead on this priority team, has emphasized with her principal supervisors and the relationships going forward there. And then final goal in priority 4C, by 2023, every school will have a community partner that is committed to providing meaningful programs and services to meet the diverse needs of students. In 2019, the first year of benchmarks, we pretty much blew that out of the water with effectiveness, because we'll go to a couple of slides ahead of our definition of community partnerships. we weren't just talking about random stuff. We were talking about significant academic, social, emotional benefit for these programs. And even with that more restrictive definition, practically every school had that partnership right out of the beginning. And I am going to show you, thanks to Dr. Danner's team, you have received a handout that lists, it's just a sampling of the partners that our schools have. And it's page after page and line after line of organizations, businesses, faith communities who are working very directly with our schools, that our schools have told us they are receiving important support for engagement, for morale building, for tutoring, whatever. Our schools have tremendous partners in a community that truly values public education. If I could go to the next slide. The strategies, including a comprehensive needs assessment at every school that could benefit from community partnerships, identifying community partners for every school, establishing relationships between school and community partners, and evaluating the effectiveness of those partnerships. And then the next slide has that definition showing that we are really focusing on academic, college career readiness, or social emotional partnerships with our schools. Every school has at least one, and as you can see, every school has a village behind them to raise a child. So key accomplishments by July 2023. Yes, all schools have at least one community partner, and we are developing a new partnership engagement process and a rubric for schools to assess the effectiveness of those partnerships. In conclusion, before we take your questions, and Dr. Danner and Ms. Cooper are here to help me out, as well as Dr. Stewart, we're excited about what's coming next. The definition of community engagement that we've been operating under has evolved significantly since 2018. Community engagement, we thought of early on as just being out there. When we think about community engagement now, when we see what our partners in city and county government have been doing, when we see the great steps forward that we took in community engagement with Growing Together, as well as the opportunities for even greater success, outreach, and equity. We're taking those lessons to heart, and we are working with the strategic planning steering committee for the next 5 years to really strengthen our focus and our intentionality about engagement. The next 5 years are going to be a significant step forward. And with that, we will take your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sutter, for walking us through that. Are there comments, questions? Ms. Rogers.
Thank y'all so much for working on this. I'm really excited about the idea of every school having a partnership and community partner. That's really helpful. I think that lots of schools rely on that. And I know it has a positive impact on the outcomes of students' lives. I think I'm going to work backwards. My first question is around slide 16 about the development of new partnership engagement process and develop the rubric for schools to assess effectiveness of community partnerships. So this strategic plan is sunsetting, but we're still in development phase. In this instance, when do we expect to have the rubric so that it is active and ready to really assess those partnerships?
So the intent, and Dr. Danner, I'll ask you to comment if you have anything to add, but the intent is to develop that so that we will have something to build from for the new strategic plan.
That's going to be approved before July 2023.
That is the goal. That is the
Okay.
goal.
Okay. Um. Okay. Is there a place that schools that don't currently have a partnership or not, or know that there's something missing in their tool chest of partners for them to go and look and see what other schools have, if they can lean on other community members? Something like this that they can access to see what's working and what's not working?
Yeah, we don't intend for this to simply be an item for your folders. This is information that we can share with our schools. We know that some of our schools have more access to resources than others. We know that it's important to foster natural relationships between constituencies and their schools, but also to ensure that the schools that have been left out are not left out. So we have partners and we have a strategy around partners for a reason. I think that it is fair to say that we are and have been since we came back from the pandemic, we've evolved from the everybody's got a partner, which everybody's got a partner, to what is the stretch goal? What is the future? How do we ensure that schools have what they need? And that is a very important part of the engagement planning for the 2023 to 2028 5-year plan.
Okay. I'm looking at the list and I'm wondering, is there anybody in the cabinet level or just below the cabinet or at each individual school that's looking to diversify the list? Because there are some places where we could have some more community partners. I'd like to see more mosques on the list. I'd like to see more food pantries on the list. I can think of a whole lot of agencies. I know this is just a sampling, but are we intentionally looking to diversify our list of partnerships?
Absolutely. And this is a start. This is a self-reported start. The next step is identifying what's missing and identifying what can be shared.
Okay. And some schools are listing PTAs and booster clubs. And I know that a lot more schools than the ones that are listing them have them. Are we making sure that they're leveraging partnerships that already exist? Or are we letting them self-identify their partners?
So this began as self-identification and illustration. This is the next step. One of the things that I wanted to do in presenting this information was to give credit to those partners and to make sure that we are celebrating them, so that you know them. And if you see organizations there that you have an affinity with, that you can share with them and give them credit. But it's also, again, it's the start. What's missing? What can be shared?
Last question. Is there a formal partnership necessary, like some contract or MOU necessary for schools to call them a community partner?
I'm sorry? Dr. Barron?
So we wanted to begin with an initial stage of identifying community partners for every school. Now that we have community partners identified for every school, we must dig deeper. And so in order to do that, we must ensure that we have a rubric that assesses the value of each partner. And that's what we must develop and have approved before June 30th. And so that's our goal, so we can roll this out in our leadership retreat with our district leaders and our school principals, so they will have a better understanding of what it means to have a meaningful, deepened relationship with a community partner that will involve a formal relationship.
Thanks, y'all.
All right. Who else has thoughts? Ms. Valladares? Okay, Ms. Meyer?
Thank you all. I really love an update on this plan, and maybe it's because I've been here so long. I kind of so much appreciate how far we have come from a staff of 2 or 3 to actually having fully built out social media, having fully built out an app of our own, which y'all didn't talk about too much, but is an exciting thing. And so I just want to applaud all the work and all the steps and all the people that have both envisioned all of this and just done the work. And acknowledge that y'all know there's more to do. And so like one of the things that I look for, and I just curate and find PTAs and our school Twitter accounts and things like that. Have we aggregated that so that if someone is new to a school, part of their introductory package is, you might want to join these groups or follow us here? Like, can I go and find the GSA at all the high schools from our central website? Like, are we still working on building that kind of district-wide knowledge base? Is that a piece of it that's still coming
That
together?
is still a work in progress, and you can see a reference to that we're working towards that in the, I believe, in the 4A accomplishments that, expanded use of social media. That also includes letting families know where that information is. We have an important opportunity before us with the launch of Growing Together in 2024 to ensure that we have information about every school and every school program and all of the reasons that people should enroll in those schools, and also how they can find information, be connected to the GSAs, know where the social media accounts are, know how to get on Instagram, Facebook, and if it still survives in 2024, Twitter. That is very much part of our ongoing work. It is not finished by any means, but we are looking forward to that opportunity. You have approved the use of the Mackenzie Scott donation. In part, there is a component of that to ensuring that we are helping to put our school's best faces forward through Growing Together, and using some of those resources will allow us the bandwidth to really, really support our families in a way that we haven't been able to this point.
I appreciate that. And I appreciate how far we've come also in terms of language justice, but also acknowledging especially that we need to keep pushing that accessibility forward as well. Even, having sign language interpretation at Evening to Shine. I mean, so much of making our district inclusive is important as y'all continue to stretch the goals here and stretch what we can do as a district, and y'all continue to win awards. I will say, like, one thing that's always bugged me about this, about 4A particularly, is that the only metrics we had were teacher working conditions, which are one metric, but we don't actually have necessarily great metrics for this. And I kind of keep a temperature check on a bunch of social media things. And, we do have more ambassadors and more parents that come and engage in a more nuanced conversation about our schools. And we have great folks like really singing our praises and standing up for the incredible work our teachers and our principals are doing every day. But it also just takes one negative experience for someone to just trash us. And these are all built relationships that we're building trust with folks, and we're building that in person after a pandemic. And so maybe it's something that we need to invest in more. And I'm glad, some of the Scott money is going there, but as y'all dream and envision together and work with the DPS Foundation, that's exciting. I think this is a really critical time for us to continue to support this trust building work. And so just bring us your dreams with this new strategic plan. I think it's super, super important.
All right, and again, and I can share that one of the things that we're going to be doing in the very near future is we have an annual parent engagement survey that is shared in all of the traditional ways, but we're also going to supplement that with taking advantage of the app and the new Blackboard communication system that we have. We're going to start doing some phone surveys of our families, phone, app, email, it all goes into the same place. Are you satisfied with the communication you receive at the school level? Are you satisfied with the communication you receive at the district level? And I appreciate getting information through these channels, just really simple, quick phone surveys of our families that could touch a lot more people than we're currently touching in English and Spanish.
Great. And you didn't even talk about the podcast. I didn't hear you talk about the podcast, but that's also another exciting use of social media technology. The app itself, do you have numbers on how many families are using that? And did I miss that if you said it earlier?
You did not miss that. I'm gathering those numbers. One of the things that I'm doing in the next couple of weeks, I need to work with Tony on that, but there's one level of functionality in the app that we need to push out to our families and train them how to use that. If they sign in through the app, if they connect PowerSchool to the app, we can directly communicate with them through the app. So it's another way that they can hear from us without getting a phone message that they may hang up on after 20 seconds because they get so many things like that. So I'll have an update for you. I owe that to my colleagues on the cabinet as well. But once we've done that push so that it can be more of a two-way tool than a one-way tool, I'll have those numbers for you.
Thank you so much.
Ms. Lewis?
Good evening, everyone. Sorry, I came in a little bit late and missed the presentation live, but I have looked at it beforehand and had a couple of questions. You may have answered it in the presentation, so I won't go into a whole lot of questions. I will follow up and watch the video of it. But one of the things I saw is that we were meeting the metrics year over year for the family engagement. Or not a family engagement, for the engagement at each school, community partner at each school, and that every school has at least one community partner. When I came in just now, what I was hearing was we don't necessarily know the quality of that relationship. We're going to do some deeper work and make sure we're having good quality relationships. I think that might be what I heard.
I think we have from our rubric, from the definition of the partner that emphasizes academic, college career readiness, or social emotional. We're confident that every school has at least one partner that fits that bill. But where do we go from here? And that was part of the conversation that we just had. So we have lots of partners. What we don't have yet, but we will have by the end of this academic year, is the rubric that will help us study that, evaluate that, and drive us moving forward in the next strategic plan.
Thank you for pointing out this piece of paper in front of me, because this is what I was looking for. What does it look like quantity wise in each of the schools broken down? This was exactly what my question. Thank you.
To Ms. Rogers' point earlier, this is self-reported, so this is just a start.
All right. Ms. Valladares? Yeah. Okay, Chair Armstead.
Thank you all for this really rich presentation. I think since my time on the board, we've come such a long way in our public affairs and being able to communicate all the great stories about DPS. I've appreciated seeing more communication on our local news as well about the things that are happening here. And I think that's because of the work of you all's office. I was talking to someone recently about how the Herald Sun is not really a thing anymore. And so I think that means our public affairs office now has to be their own kind of news source in many ways to people in the community about what's happening. So thank you all for doing that and doing it so well. I have a couple.
Ms. Umstead, if I could interrupt briefly, while you're complimenting the work of my public affairs team, I also want to compliment the work of Dr. Danner, his team, Pablo Friedman, his team, and all the work that's being done in engagement as well as marketing and communications.
The collaborative effort is what I'm hearing, which we know is true. I have a couple of comments slash questions. I wonder about how is the central office level supporting schools in their communication in this engagement? I think, the metrics here are from you all look at it, I know a central office way, but it's kind of a both and. You got central office doing communication, you got schools can doing communication. And are there any ways that you are supporting and connecting with each other or trying to streamline how that works?
So one example of that that I want to lift up is what we're doing with growing together as we go into the secondary phase of that. And which we'll be sharing some information with our community about tomorrow, as a matter of fact. We worked, as you know, really, really hard on elementary engagement, and we heard your message loud and clear about the importance of school level engagement. And we are doing a lot more at the front end with the secondary engagement, with providing communications toolkits and resources for our schools so that they are better positioned, better supported, and feel like they've got a little more breathing room in order to share information about what's being considered, what's being asked. We're going to survey our entire community starting next week about Growing Together Secondary, and we're giving our schools a lot more support in how to get that information, get those surveys out to their families. That's a huge equity issue because district level communication can only reach so many so easily.
I appreciate that learning from the elementary and thinking about implementing that differently for secondary. And I'm not sure we'll take the lessons we learned from this and may use it for whatever happens next. But I think that balance you just kind of illustrate is so important. Families will probably listen to the weekly call from their principal, maybe, sorry, Chip, over the call sometimes from you. So how do we make sure that we balance that out?
It's
sorry.
not like some deputy superintendent for operations hasn't told me that he hangs up on me frequently.
That's messed up from your own colleagues. It's all right. It's probably because he already knows what the message is going to say.
He
That's
does.
probably what it is. The other thing I want, and I also appreciate you all talking about the communication kits that you're kind of sending out. I think that would also create schools having similar messaging that they're pubbing in a way that I think is really helpful. Because you might have one school that has someone that's really great at doing this, another school that has someone that needs some support. So that's good. On the thought about the depth of relationships with community partners, I wonder if the question is more of like what schools are missing and how can we support them? I think schools are really good at deciding who they want to partner with and then saying no. Actually, when that partnership isn't working, I think I trust our leaders to do that. And so for you all's time, it might be better spent thinking about what partnerships we need to find to match versus trying to figure out the depth part. Because I really just think schools have a really good handle on, like, principals are pretty good at saying no and yes to what works and what doesn't work. That's just something for y'all to consider and think about. And then as we are going into this new iteration of the strategic plan, you talked about wanting to be better. What are you thinking about big picture as areas of improvement that you want to focus on? I know the strategic plan is in process and there's a lot of community conversations, but I didn't know if your team already had some thoughts about where you want to focus.
We do have some thoughts. I don't want to get ahead of the steering committee. So we will be coming back to you, but I think one of the things that we are being very intentional about in this iteration and what we're bringing back to the steering committee is a more laser-like focus on engagement for its own sake. The authentic communication, authentic connection. As a district, public perception is of course, it's hugely important, but the work of the school district, the work of the priorities, the 5 priorities, is all about continuous improvement of the school system, academically, socio-emotionally, human resources, engagement, and operations. If we do all those, and if my team tells the story properly, that will take care of itself. So priority 4, we're bringing to the strategic plan steering committee goals that are laser focused on the authentic 2-way engagement to promote relationship.
Thank you. That's all my questions.
All right, Ms. Valladares.
Thank you so much. I did talk to you all and we went over all this and you brought this, which excites me so much. I'm so grateful. So I'm not gonna ask a whole lot of questions because I've had my go. I just want to just let you all know how appreciative I am of this list. I see a lot of partnerships that aren't yet reflected. And I understand, to our chair Bettina's point that there are maybe some partnerships that have been sunsetted. But there are some partnerships that even if they only served one time, for example, I believe it was our chair Bettina, I believe it was my colleague Natalie Byer. We went to EKPO for the shade structure. And so I looked in EKPO and I was like, okay, let me look at EKPO. And I saw it was a dermatology association that donated a shade structure. And then also, I didn't also see EQUA on there, where EQUA helped with the rain garden. And I know that this is Melissa Rooney, right? And helping with these partnerships. So there's definitely opportunities for us to, there may be historical, maybe the Dermatology Association was a one-time kind of thing. But I think those in-kind donations of materials, maybe money, or there's maybe ways to kind of tell the story, even if, there might be current partnerships or they might be one-time partnerships. And I think those are all legit and valid. The other thing I just wanted to share is, that I know, we have so many partners, and the question that community members have asked since the 18 million, we're still having conversations, Dr. Mubenga, that 18 million, there's so many conversations. Oh my goodness. And the question is, well, how many, we see what the money's going towards, right? And we see that, like some money's going to go to support, like mental health and the festival, the whole child approach that DPS Foundation has. So we have a precedent for supporting community efforts. And they're like, what other community efforts are we supporting? And the question is, how does somebody do that? Like, say, for example, and I didn't see it on here, like Aaron Harris, sidekicks, we know that there's definitely like the Hub Farm, that Hub Farm has requested our support, and we've all kind of seen that, like they're definitely our partner. We know that the Durham Literacy Center is not featured on here, but they have been working in our schools and they're not listed here. And Durham Literacy Center, they're like, we have results. And so how do we continue to kind of look at these metrics? Because I go to the point of my colleague, Millicent Rogers, who said the rubric, right? To kind of see if there's a program that needs to be scaled up, at what point does DPS say, hey, I will meet you where you're at and let's expand this program, because Durham Literacy Center, you're doing a great job. You're showing metrics at these different schools. Let's promote that. And I also know that this is already a conversation that our admins are already having. Charles Hamilton Foundation, there's Boost. Oh my gosh, I have to say Boost Science Program, of course, not on this list, but yet there are some schools, like they're feeder schools, elementary schools, and there's the Life Center, Cornwallis, and so many others, and the Thomas Mentorship Leadership Academy, Saraso Painting. So there's so many different opportunities. Also, just because today we passed the Arts Proclamation, we have AmeriCorps that has Artist Year, I believe, which is something else that is an opportunity. These are like upcoming offerings that maybe a school is like, I want to have one of these AmeriCorps, trained artists to come and help with, development of activities for our kids. And so I think that even just if somebody reaches out to us, I'd love to send that to you all and be able to say, hey, these people reached out and they said Artist Year is happening. We have some amazing artists who can come in from all parts of the world, because AmeriCorps gets from all parts of the United States, actually, and are willing to do that. And so we have that opportunity on there. The other thing that I will also say is college access, college access, college access, college access. You have no idea the number of students I talked to, and I asked them, have you talked to a counselor about college access? And some of those answers are sad, and I know that we have an understaffing problem in terms of our students being able to have that, but we have partnerships with, and right now I know that we have partnerships with Duke and UNC, and I know it's a C College Advising Corps. And so they're not on here, but those partnerships, what high schools have those partnerships, whether from UNC or from Duke, those College Advising Corps, there's also Latinx Ed. It's not on this list, but they're also like, they have supports Adelante Coalition, CFNC, Juanes and Juana, like college access is one of those things that is an equity concern, like how many students actually get to talk about college and kind of map out their future. So I'd love for us to, once we have the robust list, to start categorizing, you know, these are schools that have college access partnerships. And that way we can start even looking at where the gaps are. Because college access is an equity concern and every student should have access. And we also are growing our own. The other thing I would just want to say is that community schools, the pillar of community engagement, it's a pillar. And we know that there are some schools that have somebody who's designated who actually does these partnerships, but this is something we have to do as a district. And I agree that this is, you know, that pillar is a pillar of, you know, part of the strategic plan in terms of like how we want to continue to stay true to these frameworks that talk about, you know, how to provide support for the whole child. And so in that support for the whole child is also their supports that help the family. A lot of supports that come for students themselves may not include the family. You know, like if there's programming in the school day, the families don't get to participate, but there are those partnerships that will help us with one of those metrics that you shared, which is two-way communication. Now, my only caveat to this thing is that you will not have two-way communication if you cripple the department that actually does this with families in terms of interpretation. Like our immigrant community is diverse and we need to scale up, because I saw that World Relief is on there, and I thank World Relief because they are supporting us in that area, because we have yet to build that capacity to hire people. And we're not even meeting the basic number for the Spanish speaking population that is the dominant the group right now in terms of like percentages, but we have other languages that are growing and we need to anticipate those changes. And so my question is, we spent some money and we gave some money to create a family engagement center. And I believe in that because I think that all of this, if there's questions from community members, I want the family engagement. I want them to have those conversations about how do we support, or how do we scale up, or, you know, how do we get funds and support, and how are we listed on the website in terms of resources? And I did send the website for our family academy. Those links, I was sending them out to folks for folks to check out. But we also need to make sure that we do not forget that two-way communication includes the equity piece of giving families the ability to engage and not have language be a barrier. And so how are we going to also, even though we didn't give any money to the MRC with the 18 million, but we always talk about the MRC here, the MRC there, the MRC with Growing Together, the MRC, how are we scaling that up so that, you know, we do what the Civil Rights Acts of 1964 said, that we have to provide that resource for families and make sure that there is no inequity in terms of barriers because of language and all the other important things. So that's on my own. So one question, how are we ensuring that as we build the family engagement center and we do all this stuff, that we do have two-way communication and increase language access capacity?
Ms. Valladares, that's a loaded question. All right, thank you so much. I'm gonna go back to your previous concern about growing MRC. I completely agree with you. But I would like for all of us to understand this couple of things. Number one, for $18 million, it was one-time money. And we were very reserved not to put positions there that's going to be reoccurring. Number two, I'm really glad that we're doing this growing together. As you can see the trend in a lot of our urban district across the nation as well, enrollment is going really down. Anytime our enrollment is going down, that means funding is not coming to us. We're gonna wait to see until August where we're gonna end up. I think at one point we're 33,000 students. Now we're floating somewhere around 31. So for us to be able to get funds from the state, we gotta have those babies on the seat. For us to be able to be pushing those positions, we gotta make sure that funding is coming from the state as well. Then number three, I would like to say this, there are a lot of needs. If you recall, the last presentation was done last year, no, not last year, last board meeting. I think one of the pressing issue that we are facing at this point, 70% of our staff that are coming to us, they are lotto entry or emergency license folks. So what is really keeping me up all night here is pretty much how can we have enough mentors to be able to support all those students and teachers in the classroom. I completely agree. There are a lot of needs when it comes to counselors and so forth, but we also have some community support, Emily Care, community in school, those coaches and all that. We have a great community that are coming pretty much to support our students when it comes to college access and all that. Are we really where we need to be? Not yet. We still have a lot of needs, but just bear with us. We really want to work really hard to improve our enrollments, because when our enrollment is a student cost, the money that we get from the state, close to $7,000 per student. Having a good 1,000 students, that's a lot of money that can come to us so that we'll be able to start adding positions in the other departments. So well noted, if I can be brief, well noted. And we really want to make sure that we are providing our families with support that they need. Two-way communications, yes, definitely. It needs to be in Spanish as well to make sure that app alone is not going to be sufficient for all our families. That's what we're starting with this initiative of was the community engagement that we presented. We have $500,000 there. That's just a starting. I think with that, you're gonna see that we're gonna try to expand it, because we are planning to use Title I money as well to support that particular initiative. But stay tuned as we're moving with this next strategic plan. We'll be able to come up with a lot of details on that.
Dr. Mubeng, I'm sorry, the Title I money, just for clarification, Title I funds, federal funds,
Yeah.
right? Can they go to the MRC? Because it's actually a right. It's actually, civil rights of 1964. Can Title I funds come towards the MRC and be used to meet that basic level requirement of giving access to families?
There is a specific formula when it comes to Title I, how we need to appropriate those funding based on the formula per school. And then there is what we call set aside money that's come to the district. And sometime in the past, with that set aside money, we support other initiatives that were pretty much reoccurring. And then we have 1% that for parental involvement need to be pulled out of Title I money. So to answer your question, yes, there's a possibility, but I do not know if those funds has been committed in the past for other initiatives. So we are open, and give us time here to see how we're gonna progress with this new strategic plan and puts the money where it needs to be.
Right. I have just a couple comments and then we'll, I think, move on if there are no other comments. I wanted to say thank you again, Mr. Sedith and Dr. Danner and Ms. Cooper, for all your work on this. And I wanted to say that I am excited about the toolkits as well. I think that's a great initiative to support our schools in communicating through growing together. I want to just make a brief comment about the slide. I'm not sure what number it is, but for priority for 4A, where the 2021 percentages for all of those four metrics were higher and in some cases substantially higher than in 2022. And I'm just wondering if that's a result of a sense of unity that happened during the pandemic and then where it kind of fell back after after we went back in person, and some of the just realities of being back in person and the difficulties of kind of catching students up and all of that kind of affected how teachers were feeling about their working conditions. So that was just one point I wanted to make on that. And then I just wanted to say about the community partnerships. I think this is a great start in our data collection around this. And I imagine there are a lot of ways that this list will be able to be used. I also just wanted to say that I hope that something that will come out of this is that different community partners will see the benefits of being part of a partnership with DPS as well in order to kind of facilitate the growth of that. So I think this is great for us to know what we're doing, but it's also great for the community to receive that information and see how maybe they can increase their involvement or get involved with our public schools and leverage the resources they have and also see the rewards from that as well. So I hope that's something that will come out of this sort of bringing to the surface what the nature of our community partnerships and where sort of regionally they fall. So those are my comments. Are there any other comments? Yeah, Ms. Yeah, go ahead.
The universities that we have, so I am so proud of my alma mater, NCCU, being featured in a lot of these schools. I have also had conversations, not recently. I don't know who on the board is having the conversation right now, but my concern has always been from the time that I've been, with Duke, the Duke and Community Affairs Office, and how they have like these legacy schools that they have over years, and the question has been, can Duke expand that commitment? And so Dr. Mubenga, you seem like you have an update on that, or?
Oh, yes, he does.
Okay, great. I'm happy.
Yes, I think prior to Dr. Stephanie Williams arriving to Durham, Duke was supporting 8 schools surrounding Duke. Now, pretty much the strategies has been all the funds have to go straight to DPS Foundation. And based on that, that's how they're going to dispatch the support all the schools. In addition to what Duke Office of Durham that's supporting the funds to send straight to the foundation. If there are other pertinent needs that we have, they are really open for us to have those conversations so that they will be able to support. Now they're supporting pretty much the whole district, not only the 8 schools that they used to support traditionally.
And as a matter of fact, Dr. Mabingo wrote a piece about Dr. Stephanie Williams that's in the current issue of Durham Magazine, their influencers section or anything. There's a two-page piece about her that speaks directly to the expansion of the service. They were a great partner for us before she has kicked it up another notch.
Okay, I think we're ready to move on. Thank you so much for this update. All right, next we are going to have we're going to talk about the retention bonus of $1,500 proposed from the ESSER funding in September 2023. And Mr. Lesor will guide us through.
Good evening, board members. We've had this discussion before. We're bringing it to you tonight in regards to a $1,500 bonus out of the ESSER funding in September to use up whatever is remaining in PRC 171 that ends September of 23. And also we'll probably have to use some of the 181, but we have to plan ahead. So we're bringing it to you tonight to allow us to move forward with the planning of that and the budgeting of that as soon as the beginning of the fiscal year starts. $1,500 retention bonus to be paid in September to all employees that are on payroll status in August. And from that standpoint, it's a short turnaround because we're going to have to do it early in the month, no later than the second week, because we have to close out that program and spend all the money by September, except for those things that are encumbered, and salary and benefits can't be encumbered. So with that said, it will be paid to all individuals in pay status, retirees, substitutes, all personnel. We will have a floor of $500 because we've got to turn this around so quickly. Anyone that's in pay status will get at least $500. With that said, we always have to pay the Social Security that goes along with that as a matching benefit from that standpoint, and as well as the federal taxes that will be applied to those checks. So we ask you tonight to approve that so that we can go forward with our planning.
Mr. Lesur, can you say how much the total is going to be?
Yeah, we anticipate it being about $7.5 million. could fluctuate, but that's what we're going to be planning on at this point in time.
Thank you, Mr. Lissor. Chair Umstead?
Thank you all for this update. This feels like maybe the third or fourth time we've done a bonus, which I think is really appreciated by our staff, and I'm really grateful that we have had the foresight to do that. You mentioned though, running out this account and needing to close it out. And so I was wondering, are we thinking that this might be the last time that we did, or I don't know if I want to even put that out there, but it sounds like we are rounding out one round of federal dollars this year. So just wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
Correct. In the fall, we will be running out this pot of money. We still have PRC 181. We also have projects that are planned for those funds at this point in time. We'll have to reevaluate it as we move down the road and as we get closer to the end of next fiscal year of 23-24, because it has to be spent by the end of September 24, except obligations that are out there for contracts and things of that nature that can go forward as late as January of 25.
I'll just follow that up. So again, appreciate you all doing this kind of work. It makes me, and I think this coupled with our advocacy on increasing teacher supplements, this budget asked for this year for increasing classified staff, like we hope, I'm wondering what other initiatives we might need to put in place as if we have to sunset the bonuses, because I think there's a time where federal money will be gone. How are we continuing to help support our educators? So that's kind of a finances/HR match. But I'm wondering, how do we also continue to support them? And there's something there for that.
Let me start off there, then I'm gonna toss it to Mr. Lissor. I think for this particular bonus, we're very fortunate because of our summer programming, which we're supposed to put aside about $10 million. We did not really serve a lot of students. So fast forwarding, when we get to this summer, depending on how many students we're gonna serve, that's the funds that we're going to depend on to have some kind of flexibility. If we recall, there was about $42 to $45 million that was assigned for operations. Now we are really moving quickly with that. You're gonna see the money is gonna go down quickly. It's only in the area of academics, and some of them there were positions that we had, and now we are sunsetting some of those positions, contact tracers and all that kind of stuff. So we're not going to know much until probably the end of June. Once we finish with 171, we finish our summer programming, then we'll know how much more we got remaining. Then we'll be able to make some adjustment from that point. But regarding supporting our educators, I think this time, as you know, we're bringing this salary study for our classified employees, and we're gonna see what our legislatures will do for our educators, and then moving forward in the future, and we'll see how we can work with our county commissioners. I think for this year, we really wanted just to make sure that we address our classified employees.
Ms. Rogers?
Thank you. So appreciative of the staff that continues to come back to DPS year after year. I know the bonuses help that. It's clear that halftime people will get 50% of the bonus. It'll be prorated based on their percent employed. Do we have a deadline of an employment date for the retention bonus?
It would be August 31st when we do our final pay for that month, because we have to turn it around right away.
So somebody hired in July would still get the
Yes.
retention bonus?
Yes.
Okay.
Anybody that's in payroll status as of August 31st will get a bonus in September.
Thanks.
Yeah, I appreciate y'all bringing this. I appreciate that there is federal money to do this. And that as much as possible, we share it with our educators and every staff member. The work they do is so important. North Carolina has fallen way too low in compensation in I look forward to the governor's budget, which promises double-digit raises for people. Let's see if we can make some noise and make that happen, because this is the state's responsibility, not the feds. This is the state's. This is not the local county commissioners. This is the state. And we're so appreciative of the strong relationship and progressive county commissioners that will partner with us to take care of our people and get them up above 17 an hour. I am confident this year. Ms. Rogers and I had a meeting with some of our instructional assistants, and they did ask, they're starting to get used to these regular bonuses. And they said, can we expect it in the future? Can we expect it in the future? I said, I don't think we're going to have this kind of federal money in the future. I think we need to be honest and open and clear with you all. This is limited. The ability to pay our IAs to do before and after school care, that's limited. I mean, we're going to have to figure all these pieces out without this infusion of federal money. So I think it's important for us to be honest with people. I think it's important for us to communicate this in paper as well as in email to folks. I assume y'all are going to let people know quickly so that they do get excited about it and think about it over the summer as a reason to return. But we need to make sure it's not just email. I know y'all have plans for that. And I wish we could do more, because North Carolina needs to do better by the selfless professionals that are working in every aspect, in child nutrition, in custodial work. It is all glorious, important, collaborative work on behalf of students. So thanks for bringing this as one small strategy that helps our people stay with our children.
Ms. Valladares.
Thank you so much for bringing this presentation. I will say that 5E, the ensuring fiscal and operational responsibility as it relates to our bus transportation. There are, anytime you have efficiency, words of efficiency, words of the rating that we have, I would just want to know what's behind that rating. Because I would imagine that bus disruptions, if there's a bus accident, if there's issues happening inside of the bus, that's going to affect efficiency. Like if a bus has to stop. Right now we've seen, sorry. But I will come back to that piece. I can't wait, because I did tell the community members that there was no way I was going to come to this board meeting and not acknowledge that we have an issue. And it's not a new issue. And I went to schools here, but I will wait. And thank you so much for my colleagues. I can't wait.
All right, we get excited about our work. Any other comments or questions?
This for action.
Yes.
So I would move that we approve the bonus for September 2023. Second.
Then any other discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye. It's been moved and properly seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, it passes unanimously. The $1,500 retention bonuses from ESSER funds. Thank you, Mr. Lesueur. And now we will move on to our strategic plan priority 5. And so, Dr. Monk, I'm passing it to you.
Thank you, Ms. Chavez. I appreciate it. And good afternoon, board. I don't know what I'm most excited about, the $1,500 or to talk about transportation. So thank you for both of those opportunities. Priority 5 is for ensuring fiscal and operational responsibility, which we take very seriously because we believe that this priority is certainly in support and service of student achievement. I'm joined tonight by Mr. Lesueur, who is my co-chair in this priority. And we also have Ms. Director Harris and Mr. Palmer that are with us tonight as well. If we can go to the next slide, please. And again, a couple of more. Thank you. Here you can see there's a lot of people that it takes to make this priority work. And we're so appreciative of the work that they do year after year to help us reach our goals. Next slide, please. And go one more. Everything is centered and is composed of these 5 items: enrollment, efficiency, student assignment, facilities, and resources. Operational services and our financial services is all about things that are tangible, and again, that support our student outcomes. Next slide, please. And one more, please. Here are our priority 5 goals. They remain the same as they were back in 2018. Making sure that we are fiscally responsible, that our grounds and our schools are maintained in a way that they're clean, they're healthy, that we have appropriate class sizes for our K-3 in particular, and that we are improving our transportation efficiency. Next slide, please. And one more. And now I'll turn it over to Mr. Lesueur to walk us through 5A.
So 5A, our fiscal responsibility is critical to success of our district. We'll exhibit the fiscal responsibility measured by clean external financial audits each year and receive the 2 awards, Association of Business Officers and Government Finance Officers Association certificates. Pleased to let you know that through the 2021 audit, we have gotten those clean audits, and we have gotten those 2 certificates. So moving us in the right direction. Strategies: maintain strong financial and internal controls, always critical in our business. Continue to apply our new accounting standards that we get and provide good financial management consistent across the board. Next slide, please. As you can see, we got our 4 stars so far. We're going to continue with that process. And if everything should go the same, we're consistent in what we do. We don't expect that this 22 audit will be any different. 21, 22. Next slide, please. I'm not going to go through all of these. One of the things we went through was implementing a quarterly ESSER report for the board to make sure that you all understood where we were headed. That's in place. We talked to you a few times about working on establishing a modern financial and human resource system. Thanks to your approval this evening, we'll move forward, and training has already started, by the way. We're really excited about that. The next steps is closing out the ESSER 2 funds in September. That's going to be a big project for us to get done, but we will do that. Working with the principals and the staff across the district in regards to bringing them up to date on changes that come about on an annual basis or monthly basis from that standpoint. And then, of course, beginning to work with WinGauge. Very exciting times we are in right now. So we're looking forward to a brighter future. Next slide, please.
All right, and thank you, Mr. Lesueur. School cleanliness, if you can go 2 slides, please. Thank you. And we also are collecting blue stars. We're also joined by Mr. Clifton Williams. I do want to recognize him. I want to thank Clifton in large part for making sure that our schools are maintained properly and clean. I would say that we're probably higher than the 90% of all of our schools being at that level of cleanliness, mainly because of the ESSER funds that we were just talking about. Whenever you're funded well and you can put it towards these types of initiatives, you have way better outcomes. We do have a note here that funding will come to an end in September of 2024. And so we need to think critically and strategically about how we can still maintain those levels so that we can keep our learning environments in a healthy and safe manner. Next slide, please. Here you will see the items that are in place right around the pandemic time, just before we did a presentation with the board in which we set that level 2 cleanliness as is rated by the APPA. In progress, we are continuing to buy materials, supplies, do training with our staff. Again, thanks largely parts to the ESSER funding. And we're going to continue on with those trainings and constant improvement. Next slide, please. Classroom space, this is exciting for everyone. If you can jump about 3 slides, please. We open up Lions Farm. We are under construction right now at Mary Massenburg. We'll be opening up Northern High School, even though it's not related to K-3. And then we have Glenn Elementary that we're going to be bidding here in just a couple of months. So this is really critical to the way that we're going to be able to service our students. It is a symbol of our appreciation for our families and our desire to have them in our school system. And our facilities and building services staff are doing a wonderful job in opening these schools up on time, even in the midst of a pandemic where it's hard to get labor and material. If you can go the next slide, please. And I've talked about every one of those things. So we're going to go to the next slide, please. And that's our learning environments. If you can skip to 2 slides. All right. A large part of this initially was set around the vestibules themselves as relates to school safety. We have integrated though into that our door locking mechanism, making sure that all of our exterior doors lock properly, as well as adding the key fob systems to a lot of our schools, and we're going to continue on with that. Our next phase will be to do indoor and outdoor lighting upgrades. A lot of that has actually been funded with our lottery funds. You all have approved those contracts previously. Next slide, please. So right now we are continuing to update our learning environment guidelines. Previously, they've been centered around elementary schools because those are our first schools out. But as we start to move into our design and construction of our middle and high schools, we will also be updating our design guidelines around those, which will also include our furniture and technology upgrades. And then some of our next step, of course, will be for the to abate the fire code violations. We've all talked ad nauseum about those things that we need to do to upgrade our facilities there. And then again, it's been about 5 years since we've done our comprehensive district-wide facilities assessment. And so we need to do that as well. And that will be a part of what we'll start into late summer, early fall. Next slide, please. And then the much anticipated transportation efficiency. I didn't know this was going to be the main course here. If you can go 2 slides, please. Here we have our transportation efficiency ratings for each year. A lot of this was held harmless because of the COVID pandemic, but we will be back to the way that the state judges us with that. If you can go to the next slide, please. We use various different strategies to help with our transportation efficiency. Things such as the bail times, introducing technology through the use of Edgelog parent portal, and then in the future, implementing our Spark card where we can basically take attendance of our students on the buses. As it relates to the transportation efficiency that Ms. Valladares was talking about, I can have Mr. Palmer come up and he can give you definitely the technical way that the state does it, but it's not related to the efficiency that you may think it is, as far as how quickly can we get students, to and from school. It's mostly about how efficient are our routes, where we assign students to and those kind of things. But Mr. Palmer, if you want to give a brief definition of that.
Thank you, Dr. Monk, and good evening all. It says I have 3 minutes here, so I'll try my best. Very briefly, just that we want to tease apart some of the different measures that we would think about as it relates to transportation service. So efficiency quite literally means how good are we at performing our services in relationship to the resources it requires to perform them. And that particularly relates to loading of students on buses, on routes. There again, Director Harris and his team in transportation are some of the best in the state, if not the country, as it relates to doing the most with the resources we have. I think Dr. Monk, for the time being, I'll leave it at that. In regards to other indicators of service, that might include consistency and so forth. Those are additional points of conversation that we can certainly answer questions about as you may have them. But efficiency really is how much can we produce with the resources that we have? And there we do benchmark with some of the best here in North Carolina and beyond. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Palmer. Next slide, please. And so here are some of our quick wins. As Mr. LaSour said, once again, the Certificate of Achievement for Financial Reporting, we've received that. We are continuing to invest for capital and equipment and increase staffing allotment using ESSER funds for our cleanliness in our buildings. Mackenzie Scott grant, I know that we've already talked about that, but $1 million of that is going towards upgrading our emergency management communication system, which is certainly important. And then 5E with transportation, utilizing technology for turn-by-turn navigation, real-time GPS to improve some of those efficiencies that Mr. Palmer lifted up, student safety and communications with families. And with that, like I said, we have a lot of our operation leads here with us, as well as finance, and we'll open up for questions.
Great, thank you so much. And we're going to start with Ms. Rogers.
Thank you for this update. Much appreciated all around. I'm glad to see those stars. I guess my first I'll do my comments and then I'll do my question. So my comments around the cleanliness of the schools. And when I was in high school, there was a student that I'm realizing now that my kid acts like. His name was Spencer, and he was always walking through campus, picking up the trash. It was very important to him. I think it's going to be important as we move into the new strategic plan to make sure that we're including students in the care of our campuses, in the care in Durham. Because when we get in the car, we don't drive like there's nobody else on the road. And so we all have a collective duty to make sure that our school's picked up, to make sure that we're doing some cleaning. I want to see some initiatives around Make a Difference Day and Earth Day in April, so that we're making sure that our communities and our partners are coming out, working alongside parents and families, and really investing in making sure our schools are clean. If we could do that quarterly, that would be ideal. I don't expect them to go in, with the cleaning solutions and things like that, but it's a shared space and we should all care for that shared space. I do have questions around efficiency and transportation, and I did not email you, so I don't expect an answer right now. I know in Wake County, they are eager to take on some of our students who live in the county of Durham, but in the city of Morrisville. I don't know what that looks like in Chapel Hill. Can we get an update on those numbers? And if we expect that to make our travel more efficient? I don't know. I was told it was like 4 students or something like that, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, so let us look into that and then we'll send an email out to the board. Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Other comments, questions? Ms. Valladares?
Thank you for providing the information. And I do agree there are metrics that we also have to look at. And Director Joe Harris, nobody envies your job. Nobody envies your job. It is a hard job. I really appreciate the graciousness, the responsibility, the commitment that you have, to tend to, believe me, even what I send to you all and other people send, I know there are other, there's so many folks letting you know about things. It is definitely indicative of Durham just being in crisis. We have a gun violence crisis. We have a lot of stress. There's trauma upon trauma upon trauma. And one of the most hard environments to be in is to be enclosed in a school bus for sometimes even more than an hour, because of whatever reason, traffic, Durham is definitely becoming, there are areas in Durham that are already starting to gridlock. And I complain about coming from Raleigh from work, but Durham is also starting to get gridlocked. And so we've had, accidents, we've had emergency situations, I really commend the School for Creative Studies and the principal going with the students, and, we have to coordinate with the Durham response, the ambulance, right? And there was all these different factors, so much that goes on. And I do not envy your position, because I know there's so much that comes at you. And I just first want to thank you, because we know this is a hard job to do with the shortage of bus drivers. But there is a call from the community for us to figure out how to support your department, because obviously this is affecting the safety of students. It's also the question about having enough monitors. And, it was interesting to have community conversations, and the community has been asking these questions for years. And, they were able to kind of share some of what those conversations were like. Like, for example, we can't just have parent volunteers step up and say, I want to ride with my child because my child has been bullied, and I want to ride to the school, and I want the bus to drop me off. Like, we have, best practices, and we also have guidelines, and we have laws, that, and there's background checks. And then there's also like, vetting and that whole process of who's a monitor and who's not a monitor. But the question that the community has is, because I see that goal 5E says that we are, putting some monies towards emergency 5D says emergency management communication systems. I wanted to tease a little bit more. I want to hear more about how that it's money that's coming from Mackenzie Scott grant, which serves our Mackenzie Scott families, right? Our families that, Mackenzie Scott grant will go towards updating the DPS emergency management communication system. But I just wanted to know a little bit more about that communication system and how it will help us, because we have to keep an eye on, the bus accidents that are happening, and the response time and how to communicate with families. I don't know if that is included in there. We learned a lot, and I think all the community at School for Creative Studies, just a lot of love, and also like acknowledgement that there's so many different pieces to this. There's a piece that we own, there's a piece that the city owns, there's, and the principal trying to do the best job, and the families definitely wanting to know how can we improve emergency communication. So that's one question. The other question that I have is, there was a question from community members, and I want to thank Mama Nia for these questions, in terms of strategy 5, evaluate school programming to ensure effective use of transportation funds. When you talk about programming, is there an opportunity to provide programming for students in that enclosed environment that is, we're talking about trauma, students who need trauma support and are in these buses, and this is a prime place where there's not enough personnel, sometimes we have, absent monitors. Sometimes we're looking for monitors. We're trying to fill the gaps, and it's creating all the different pieces for trauma to be exacerbated, and for there to be bus violence, for there to be more of those things that we're trying to mitigate, like bullying, for there to be even disruptive kind of things that don't help us in terms of trying to not have any accidents. We don't want to have accidents, and the bus driver is trying to do the best to keep the eyes on the road. And then who's kind of handling and, helping kind of keep kids down. So the question was whether some funds, school programming funds, can be used towards programming that is happening on the buses. So kids are, being enriched. If there's some kind of kits, that we can have, if there's some kind of investment that DPS can have in terms of providing programming for the kids that are riding the buses, so they can not, so we can reduce some of these issues that we have.
All right, I'm gonna start off, and then if Mr. Harris and Mr. Palmer have anything to add, certainly welcome them. All right, so 5D is for our campuses. Doesn't mean that we won't expand out to how we communicate with buses, because we're an enterprise system. But this is particularly for radio and emergency management communications at our campuses. That's what 5D is for. As it relates to the programming that they're referring to here, that is largely what Growing Together is. Where are programs on our schools located? How can we regionalize, and so that buses aren't going all the way across the county, north, south, east, and west, and trying to get people to the type of school programs that they want to go to, as well as some of the time changes that we did, so that each school level is on the same block of time, as opposed to having, some elementary start at 7:30, others at 9:30. So that's the type of school programming that we're discussing there. If that good, I did it right. Okay, thank you. All right.
Just to follow up, is that something that we can do or look into in terms of what funds could we use? Because the thing is also, and somebody made the point, we want to incentivize bus ridership. Like if we were saying we have this service, right? And those services, they're going to be looking at the quality of the service. And of course, we have our rating and that's great, but it doesn't mean anything to families who feel like it's unsafe. You know, and we're going to have families who sign up for the buses, but then don't do the buses because the child is like, I don't want to be on that bus with some kids who might jump me. Like that is a real thing that I've heard from families where they're signing up for the service, but then not doing it and their kids are avoiding a situation. And so my question is, I understand what this encompasses, but how can we think about supports? Because to be a trauma-informed district means we have to look at where those pain points are. And one of our biggest pain points is exactly what's happening in the buses. And so what resources, and to the point that Mama Nia was making, like, you know, these are conversations that she's having about programming on the buses, you know, being able to be an equity-driven district that is looking not at giving everybody parity, because there are some kids who are bus riders who a snack is waiting for them in the car. That was a point she also made. So I want to give credit. Like they're being greeted by a parent who's able to pick them up. I'm not able to pick up my own kids from my own school. You know, I'm working in Raleigh. I'm all the way over there, right? And it's like I think about those families who are impoverished, right? Who are definitely doing the best that they can to thrive in Durham and all the gentrification that is happening in Durham. And they have the choice. The only choice is the bus system. And they're saying, what can DPS do to be equity minded to make sure that these kids are taken care of, that, you know, that bus ride can become a bus ride that includes, whether it's programming, whether it's more supports, whether it's something that will calm, you know, kind of calm, keep the environment conducive towards better relations among students and reduce bullying.
Thank you. I'm trying to tag team with Dr. Monk here. I want to be honest here. It's a challenge. When it comes to bus violence and all that kind of stuff, DPS is not the only place. It's we have fights on the buses, wake other places as well. Our job is to be proactive to make sure that all our babies are safe as we're working with our bus drivers. And I think to your idea of how can we get our students engaged on the bus while being safe? It's something that's give us time to be able to reflect on that. I know we're working closely with Book Harvest. We're getting books, and every family should have a repertoire of books and all that kind of stuff. That can be something. How can we incentivize our students to be engaged on the bus and things of that nature? I don't think that we're going to trust that responsibility to our bus drivers, as it's really a tough job for them to do. But give us time to be able to work with our educators and our principals to see how can we make it more engaging while they're on the bus. But I just wanted to be really transparent. I've done this work for a long time. Fights on the buses happen everywhere, all the time. Kudos to our bus drivers that they have to keep focused on driving and find the right place to be able to pull over and to make sure that before they can intervene instead of stopping in the middle of the road. That's really challenging. It's all over the place. Give us time. I think I take it as something that we need to reflect on and be able to work with our staff to see what would be the best things that we can put in place to be able to get our kids safe and engaging on the buses. But let me also take this opportunity really to say kudos to our transportation. Anytime I'm on the news, watching the news in other district where parents are Ubering their kids from school to the school, then when I look at our department, I say, we're doing a lot of things beside the compensation. As you know, we start paying with perfect attendance, and I heard other districts, they're trying to copy the same thing as well. So we're trying to be really proactive, and I'm really proud. And I know some of our family, they struggle, but I have not heard any stories about a student being Ubered. So we are doing really well, and I don't want to add more responsibility on you guys there, but we're going to work with our principals and to find a better way of how can we keep our buses safe. And I just really wanted to finish to say this. I've seen fights on the buses, and we got to educate our bus drivers to stay focused but we also gotta have to help our students and our families gotta support us to be able to prevent those violence on the buses.
I think it's such a great opportunity on this strategic goal, especially to thank our people that are doing this work. Transportation, y'all are running it because you've got people running 2, 3, 4 routes, stepping in and covering things at the last minute, early in the morning, late in the evening. Custodial staff, when we go in our schools, I know you all see the same thing. The floors are shining like we've just come back from summer, but we're in the middle of the school year. And that's because people are working so hard. So please convey our appreciation to them. Our payroll staff and finance staff, we're asking them to drop bonuses here and there and to do all kinds of things while they do paying substitutes on a biweekly basis instead of monthly. Like y'all have done so much that we've asked you to do as we move towards equity. And so I want us to if you guys can convey that appreciation from us to them for that ongoing daily hard work. They are such an important part of our team. And also to Miss Sandra Clemens White, who retired, who was our board liaison, and then we shared her with you all over there, but we miss her. Please convey that to her. Everybody that's part of the DPS team is such a critical part of the collaborative work. So thank you. That's what I think of when I think of this strategic goal.
Chair Umstead?
I won't repeat all of Ms. Byers' thank yous, but thank you all. And I think about the thousands of children that you're transporting every day. And so we know we have incidents that we're in areas to improve, but there's still thousands of kids kind of getting back and forth every single day, which I think is a really great and impressive feat that y'all do. I hate to be like the person again, it's like, oh, 2024 is coming soon. And you all talked about how a lot of ESSER funding is supporting a lot of the work that we're doing, thinking about custodial staff and keeping things clean. Like, are we planning for what happens after that? And what does that look like for us? I think we need to be thinking about our budget in almost a 2, 3, 4, 5-year cycle. And I just keep hearing our ESSER funding is great and has funded and allowed us to do a lot of really good things, but we need to prepare for what happens after that, because I still want us to have really beautiful schools and great transportation and all of that. So I don't know if that's an open-ended question or not, but just curious to know, when are we going to hear about what happens, unfortunately, in the fall of 2024 when this funding goes away?
Yeah, I'm glad you lifted that up. I think capital funding always gets people excited because that's new buildings and renovations and things like that. But equally important is our operating funds, and that's how we pay for custodial staff and supplies and materials. And so I think that as we continue to grow in our relationship with the county in that funding, that we increase that just like we've done our capital increases. And I think that we've demonstrated that when we have that funding, we're able to move the district forward with our capital improvements. And I know for a fact that we'll be able to do the same thing as it relates on our operational services side, because we're doing it now with the ESSER funding. So we got to continue those conversations and make the link between the two.
That's really helpful to hear. And I think we've been grateful to have a good relationship with our county commissioners, and especially in the last couple of years and years that you've been here, Dr. Monk, and your leadership have been able to increase that money. I was here before when we didn't have that regular capital outlay. I would love to know how much money we're using for ESSER funding right now, and so how much that potential ask might be from the county in 2024, 2025, like when those asks will come, just so again we can kind of get our heads wrapped around what are we thinking about for increased ask. I think that would just be helpful for planning, because I'm sure that we're also going to be thinking back to teacher supplements at some point, and something else is coming at some point. So how do we think about these budget asks in a little bit of a 5-year almost what's coming up?
Absolutely. So the last time that we did the calculation, we said that we needed close to $15 million a year for the operational type stuff. Now that's broken down into a couple of different ways. Again, part of it is capital and renewal to make sure that we're replacing items before they break. I'm sure that you all get emails if the air is off and there's testing going on. That is not an ideal time for a chiller to go off. When it is an ideal time is whenever it's, November, and you're not using the chill. Well, maybe here in the South you are. But typically you're not, you can plan to take that down and replace it. The other portion would be those operational funding so that we can increase our custodial staffing levels. Right now, we're probably running at about 27,000 square feet per man person, but we would like to get that down to like 18,000 square feet, which is a significant amount. The other thing is there's times where we can't do the deep cleanings that we want to do because our schools are occupied a lot. And so we also want staffing for the evenings and the weekends, in which time you would probably want to pay some type of shift differential, right? So those are the types of things that we want to do. And then the preventative maintenance. The preventative maintenance allows all this new equipment that we're purchasing to last a much longer time and operate more efficiently, which goes back into our energy consumption, which goes back into how much money we're paying with our energy bills. We'll be avoiding some of that cost, which puts more money back into the classrooms. So we see it as an investment in your assets, which in turn is going to invest in our children's education.
I appreciate that number, 15 million. We might need to, I don't know, it feels like the Cadillac version. We might need to figure out where else we go from there, but
Remember, we're adding square feet.
That's-
So we're adding Murray Massenburg, we're adding Northern High School, and our elementary schools that we're building are basically going to be brand new and larger. And they're replacing our old and out of date mobile classrooms and putting people under one roof. So we're getting larger. It's going to take more money for us to operate.
I look forward to advocating on our behalf for some of those additional funds because we're going to need it. The other question I have for you, and it's related to public comment we got at our last meeting. Y'all talked about learning environments. That's indoor, I think, and outdoor facilities. So we had comments around the track at Hillside, and I know that you all, we've approved contracts around tracks. So I just want to hear a little bit of the process around when you decide to replace or repair tracks at our high schools.
So a part of the facility condition assessment that we'll be doing, we'll be looking at our athletic facilities, the Hillside track in particular. There's a repair purchase order that we're doing for that to get it in shape for this track season. But we're also looking at if the polyurethane that's being proposed is a better option than the latex that we have. And so we'll have a improvement plan for all of our tracks that are related to that. But on our middle school side, there are some tracks that we are using a different type of lottery fund to resurface those, and that's underway now.
Thank you. That's all my questions.
I'm gonna go to Ms. Lewis since you haven't spoken yet, and then Ms. Rogers.
Dr. Monk, you seem really excited about this presentation and everything you're sharing right now. Thank you. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you to our transportation team, our janitorial team, doing an outstanding job, working towards 5 stars from this 5-year plan. So definitely congratulations there. I remember talking a few years ago about the bus drivers being the first person that our children see, those who ride the bus. And we talked about the diversity training for bus drivers, such as just culturally responsiveness, smiling when kids come onto the bus, not assigning seats by gender, things of that nature. I'm wondering, as much as turnover we've had and as much work that we've done to retain perfect attendance, I had not heard that on the news of other districts taking that or wanting to follow our lead. But I have heard the bell schedules people are starting to visit that we did, 2 years ago. So again, Durham leads is my point. As we talked about that a few years ago with the training. Are we still doing that type of training for our bus drivers?
Yeah, and I'm going to actually let Mr. Palmer come up and speak to some of the training we've been able to do. And thank you to Dr. Mabanga. We actually have Principal Phillips, that used to be at Club, is our director of classified training now. And so I am excited, again, because not only are certified folks getting professional learning, but also our classified employees. I actually got to sit through one, I think it was last week, with some of our operational leadership team. And it was a very good training. And one of the videos that they showed was a little boy whose first person was the bus driver. And they first showed the video where he didn't have a good interaction with the bus driver or whenever he got to school, and how his day went versus whenever he was met with a smile and a good greeting, not only on the bus, but also at school. By the school personnel. So training, we believe, is critical to how we implement our strategies and do our daily jobs. But in addition to that, I'm going to let Mr. Palmer speak about some of those trainings that we have.
Thank you, Dr. Monk and Ms. Lewis, to kind of build on Dr. Monk's response. Within school planning and operational services, we actually have the first two opportunities in the day to help every child feel supported and start right, ready to learn, not only with bus service, but also serving breakfast when they arrive at school. So total, we have between transportation and nutrition, 600 staff members. And I would be elastic in that and say, yes, bus drivers and our bus monitors that are en route are important to be able to support children as well as their families, but also our staff that are deployed at the area lots and in central office. Of course, they're again in our school kitchens. So under Dr. Mabenga and Dr. Monk's leadership, we've embarked in coordination with Dr. Bullock and Ms. Phillips with regards to professional development for all of our classified staff. We were just actually at a session within the last few weeks here with our bus drivers and our school nutrition staff, the same training Dr. Monk was referencing, professional standards for communication, really talking about emotional intelligence, talking about the importance of empathy and putting ourselves in those little tiny shoes and thinking about how would we want our days to start way back when, and recognizing that we have a gift, an opportunity to set the day right for our kids. And so this is us leaning very much into the whole child emphasis within the board and district's priorities, and we're excited to have that opportunity. That's one vignette, one little sample of the professional development that our staff will be going through over the years ahead.
Thank you for that. Well done. And as I think about bridging school to home, I'm glad, Ms. Valladares, you brought up the conversation on programs. And Dr. Mabenga responded that, maybe even with book harvest, that's an idea that you all are already thinking about that need a bit more time. And that's what I was wondering, like, do we have bus safety that's shared with the students? Is there like an orientation or onboarding, or what it should be like to ride the bus, especially when it's their first time, what the expectations are, what they could do instead of just sitting there, anything like that type of orientation for our kids, and then communication to the parents. If the parents, we can be engaged in a way that helps us to reinforce the message from the schools. I've had some conversations with some different school personnel with bus issues, and I can just say, again, transportation, the leads at the schools have been so responsive and checking into matters immediately and quickly. I just want to make sure we're having communications to bridge school to home, that parents can support, parents and guardians can support messages, and that kids learn how to ride the bus too, that we are teaching that.
Good idea. Just want to acknowledge that. Good feedback.
Thank you. I like having a good idea every now and then. And then the last thing I'm gonna say is a disparity study. We were talking about partnering with the county on that, and that did not come through, or with the city. I know that is truly important, so we get a baseline of where we are and that we look at where we need to build. So I'm bringing it back up for a conversation. I think it's about 300,000. What are our next steps at this point, since we were not included with the county disparity study? The city had already begun. What are our next steps? You got 300K for us.
I was gonna say, yeah, that would be the next step, is to identify some funds. So I think that this is something that that Dr. Mabenga and Paul and I can discuss, and since we aren't able to partner with those entities, and see if this is something we can do for ourselves.
Thank you.
Ms. Rogers?
Sorry, y'all. Major kudos to the folks in the office that are answering the phones in the mornings and the afternoons. I call a couple of times a week. I'm hearing from community members still that they're still waiting for transportation. Do we still have a wait list for transportation? Do we have, what about for students with disabilities? Are there issues and discrepancies there with getting those folks on the bus and to school. And while you're coming up, and I'm just kind of putting this here for our notes as a collective for the strategic plan. I'm glad y'all are getting 5 stars. I'd like to see us with some measurable metrics in the next strategic plan on how quickly we can get these routes assigned and the bus is functioning efficiently, because that has a direct impact on student outcomes. But that's for all of us as a collective.
Good evening. So in regards to students that are waiting for transportation, we're not aware where there is a backlog of any students that's waiting for transportation. Currently, right now, when students come in on our upload daily, our staff is working on uploads each day in regards to transportation. What possibly could be happening is it could be an address mismatch, or it could be a student is not coded yes for transportation. And so if you have some areas where you've got students, send that information to us, and we'll be more than happy to look into it and see what's going on with it. In regards to the special needs, we are working very hard to make sure that we're meeting the needs of all the families. And in some cases, there possibly could be one or two where there is a couple days delay in us routing them, simply because we have to make sure that we have all the necessary equipment and things of that nature in place to make sure that we are meeting the needs of the IEP, as well as making sure we have trained monitors to be able to support those students within the bus to and from school or contracted services.
And so we have a clear communication plan with those families on how quickly they should expect transportation, or if they should expect transportation if there's a delay.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Ms. Valladares?
I want to let you know the EduLog application that I'm hearing, language access is one of the things I'm also checking for, and families are grateful for, they're able to use it. Our website has the instructions, and so I've been able to I love it when everything I'm like, let's go to the DPS website, and it's important because we need to have as much information for our families, and they're able to download it, and it kind of gives instructions. Frequently asked questions. I think we need to update for anything that any technology, any app. I mean, let's do FAQs that keep being updated. And so just in case there are families who have issues with that, but I really commend you. I'm going to go back to the annual efficiency rating, and I understand this is about the bus stops, the efficiency, and Dr. Palmer, you explained you have to take into account, are you choosing the best routes, and are you choosing the best bus stops within the radiuses that you're looking at? Can you tell us how Durham, being Durham with the unique populations we have in Durham, how we're paying attention to kind of like that balance, or that, the word is not balance, but it's kind of like a little bit of that, the word, I don't want to use compromise, because we shouldn't have to compromise on anything. But what I'm alluding to is that we have a population like McDougal Terrace, and based on efficiency, based on the map, it might make sense to have the stop right here. It's you can do the calculation and kind of see where it is. Is it central to most of the students that are in building 9, for example? But if there are community concerns about safety, and say, for example, and I know this is a case because I know you all, there were emails, and I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one who sent the emails, but there was that conversation about efficiency versus people, right? At what point do we kind of say this might make sense from an efficiency standpoint in terms of the route, or in terms of having it at this particular spot? But if they're saying that's a spot where, number one, there's no supervision, we're kind of detached from where families are actually able to, be there and kind of take a look and support our students. How have we managed that conversation? And is that something that you also can provide to the people who are establishing the rubric, right? Who are grading us, who don't understand that, we're having to make some choices that are Durham based, because this is a particular place that needs that kind of attention. And how are we communicating that to them to let them know, this is actually the most efficient when we not only take into account just the distance, but also just the safety, and also these other parameters that they may not know about.
Thank you, Ms. Valladares. A couple levels to respond to there. I think one, efficiency and equity are not always in contradiction to one another. And we lead firstly with service and safety. Efficiency, of course, is the third pillar for us, and we are mindful of it, as well as environmental sustainability, but really upstream of that, how good are we at getting kids to school, and can we do so safely? Those are the two guiding lights for us. And so when it comes to stop placement, for example, I cannot think, Joe, please correct me if I'm wrong, but we try very intentionally with stop location designation. We've had many instances just this year where there's a request from parents or neighbors to say, hey, let's move it a few houses down because Ms. Smith has eyes on the street and that would be a great spot to be. That's dynamic. We realize that every year is different, but we are also trying to have, going back to the rubric for a moment, consistency with where we're placing stops and what information loads into that. We cannot do the door stops that we would all love to do where we pull up to the door and the driver honks twice and everyone runs after the bus. That's not possible given all things. What we are mindful of is that we have a lot of information now that we didn't used to have. That includes not only we use that term optimization of how good are we at loading the buses. We're good at that, but also can we at the same time be good with providing a high level of service, consistency, predictability, and safety for our families and kids. And we think that is something that could be pursued simultaneously, that they don't have to be in contradiction. Candidly, our level of service when it comes to consistency, a minor disruption can have a big wave effect because we don't have enough drivers. We've had that conversation over the last years. It's not a new phenomenon, but I think Dr. Monk alluded to it upstream. We've done many of sort of the best practices that now our peer counties are looking to and saying, okay, let's do what Durham's doing. To Ms. Lewis's point, let's watch Durham lead the way and try to learn from that. It's what has allowed us to prevent, to Dr. Mabanga's comments, cutting service entirely. That said, for those watching at home, for those that are interested in the topic, we need bus drivers and we will help you get your CDL, passenger and school bus designations. We have principals who, when we need them, they're on the call. Ms. Smith,
We
right
have
here.
Nicole.
We've
Yes.
got folks that understand the need and the charge at hand. And so I would fully respond there again and just say efficiency and safety and equity don't have to be in contradiction, but we have to be planned and intentional about it. And we're very focused on that, not only for this year, but moving forward as we think about the next strategic plan and beyond.
I want to thank you for that because I know you're all, looking at these things and it makes me proud, the way that we are, it's attunement, right? We're attuning to the needs of our families. I know that this presentation included the custodial piece, and I'm so glad that we have, our dedicated staff. And I do have, just also appreciation for meeting the goals, keeping our schools clean. I will tell you that in the same way, how do we continue to optimize, but also be people first? My concern is the same concern about shortage. We have a shortage. Sometimes we have folks who, not just because of the vacancies, because every time we see those reports, we see that there are people signing up for these positions and we're trying to do the best to keep all the positions filled. But even just in terms of just daily life where people have to take a day, sick day. And when it comes to a goal where we want to have the school sparkling clean, but you have people calling out, like, I know that when the students come in the next day, they just want to see the school clean. But I want us to also be an employer that is people first. What does that mean? That means that if there's one person, right, who other people called out and there's one custodian, and that custodian is responsible for the work of 2-3 people, because say, for example, that particular night, people called out sick, how are we continuing to maintain like expectation? We don't want to ever be the kind of district that, attains our goals at the sacrifice or overexertion of our staff. And so I do have that concern, and I know that we think about this, but I just wanted for the community to hear, if for example, like there's communication with the school, like, hey, the cleaning of the school at 100%, it couldn't happen. One person can't do 100% of a cleaning of a school. And maybe there's like a side that is not going to be as kept, but there's communication about, we have the necessary personnel to make sure that the entire school is taken care of, but it's not going to come at a cost of one employee having to scurry and stay, and fret about, oh my God, the whole school has to be clean and people called out sick. So I wanted like highlight that, and I wanted to just hear it also and give time and room for how I know we're doing this, but how we're navigating complexity and navigating challenges of shortages.
Good afternoon, good evening, everybody. So our focus is to always just treat our people right, starting off with uniforms, make sure that they have the equipment that they need. We're trying to do those things to encourage people to come to work, to have the things you need to do your job. Employee celebrations, all of these type of things we're trying to be consistent at, just so that they want to come to work for the time they're there. We utilize temp services if needed to support like schools that may need it for a temporary amount of time, but our true focus is just to treat them right consistently. So if we're doing that, I feel confident that they'll come, and then they can come in, go have the stuff they need, and then they'll go home. But overall, it's just treating them right every day.
Thank you so much, Mr. Clifton Williams, right? Thank you so much for all you do.
Ms. Byer?
So I just was looking at the transportation website at DPS, and there is good safety information and FAQs for families to have conversations with their students at home. I think it's great that that content is there. And I heard you say, and I just want to make sure that this is still a good number, 919-560-BUSS. That still works, right? That is the number, 919-560-BUSS. I've been calling that one for a long time. But I have always known you, Mr. Harris, to be so responsive to family concerns, student concerns, individual concerns. And I know sometimes families will hear stuff that our drivers aren't necessarily aware of and will need to be shared with you all. And so I know 560-BUSS will get them an answer and get them support for their students. And thank you so much for leading this important effort. That's all I wanted to get out there to folks if they don't know that number. Thanks.
Very great. Are there any other comments, discussion? All right, we thank you so much for your presentation on priority 5. And with that, we will move to a summary of follow-up items.
Yeah, so Dr. Hardy has conveniently left. All right. Not a problem. So as it relates to the update for the board LGBTQIA plus training, we're going to make sure that the invitations have been sent out to the members of the task force, and Mr. Southard will follow up with an update to the board. Staff will work so that we can actually stream that training, and then look into a separate training for the task force since the training is centered around governance. The priority 4 update, Mr. Southard will provide the board with an update of the number of families who are utilizing the DPS app. Staff will have the community engagement rubric developed by June 30th, 2023. We're going to think more about the breadth instead of the depth of community partnerships, strengthen congruence between district and school level communications, and ensure we have college access partnerships with at the high school level. Priority 5, make sure that we include students in the cleanliness metrics for the next strategic plan. Example given was something like Earth Day. Number of students who live in Morrisville, we'll check out that for you and get you an update on that. Bus ridership orientation, and I thank Ms. Byer for lifting up the information that we have on the website, and then we're looking into a way to make it more of a actual, training or program for our families. We're going to look into the funding for the disparity study out of our own coffers. We're going to think about some different metrics that we can include in the next strategic plan around route assignment timeliness, and then do a fact update for anything that we may be changing on our website. Do you have anything else? Okay, thank you. Programming. Yes, I think that's gonna be yes, we will do some programming, yep. For buses. Will do, okay, yeah. All right, good?
Thank you.
Okay.
That's great. All right.
So
With that, I'll take a
I
motion.
would move that we go into closed session for the reasons stated on the agenda.
Second.
Any discussion? It has been moved and properly seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, with that, we will move into closed session.
I got it. We're now back in open session. Dr. Mavinga.
Madam Chair, I'm here to seek your approval for the personnel report as discussed at the closed session.
Move approval of the personnel report dated March 9th, 2023.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please use the same sign. It passes unanimously. And with that, we are adjourned.